Chapter 76. Nan Yujin's answer surprised Nan Wu. Second uncle, do you have a bad relationship with my father? Actually, it's no secret. My eldest brother and I have had a bad relationship since we were young. He is the kind of patriarchal elder brother who always likes to discipline my disobedient younger brother on behalf of his parents. As for me, I am also the kind of free and lazy brother. It's just that in front of you, we always have to act like brothers and sisters, and you were too young to see it. After hearing this, Nan Wu felt even more weird in his heart. On the surface, Nan Yujin seems to be exposing his shortcomings, but in fact, this kind of self-exposing of his shortcomings is more conducive to enriching his character image. A perfect second uncle, only a girl who is not familiar with the world will believe it, but anyone who has experienced a little bit of trouble should also know that there are no such wonderful people and things in fairy tales in this world, and those who are too perfect must be pretending. In many cases, proper smearing is conducive to increasing credibility. And what Nan Yujin is doing now is to properly discredit herself. So, how should Nan Wu feel about this? Just as I was thinking, I heard Nan Yujin say again, but my eldest brother and I only had trivial conflicts when we were young. As I got older, I actually respected my elder brother more and more. Because I realized more and more clearly, the reason why I can live carefree and even do whatever I want is because I have an elder brother who protects me from the wind and rain. He inherited the family business, and he also inherited the heaviest burden. After a year, he is truly at ease. How many days can there be? On the contrary, I can run here and there, roaming around. As Nan Yujin spoke, she raised her head slightly, as if caught in memories. I still remember when you were young, I gave you a box of Monday calamari mechanical crafts, and you couldn't put it down. At that time, my elder brother looked at me with envy. You know, that was the first time I saw my elder brother envious the eyes of others. He has been the model heir of the 4 major families since he was a child, and he is also my model brother. He can do everything with ease. Why should such a person envy others? But at that time, he was clearly envious of me. I am so free and envious that I can bring you the gifts you like, but he doesn't even have the time to choose gifts for his daughter. Speaking of this, Nan Yujin was very melancholy, and Nan Wu's eyes were even redder. Half is false, half is true. Nan Yujin's words really hit the nail on the head and aroused her grief. However, Nan Wu was half helpless, half self-deprecating, and found that even in the midst of mourning, such thoughts would involuntarily appear in his mind. After playing the human card, start playing the emotional card? The second uncle really played a seamless role. How long had he rehearsed in advance to gain his trust? The cynicism in Nan Wu's mind did not affect her actual performance. She lowered her head, gently wiped the corners of her eyes, and said in a soft voice, "Second uncle." Nan Yujin said, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said this to you, but I couldn't help it for a while. But in short, even if it's to repay the kindness my brother has shown me over the years, I will do my best to help you through this painful run-in. Expect." "Thank you, second uncle. What are you being polite about? This is what I should do. All right, let's stop gossiping here and go to the Sky Dome as soon as possible. The meeting you attended earlier is actually not important. The important thing is before and after the meeting. The members of the board of directors of the group say hello. But the hotel on the ground cannot say hello to the people in the sky." "Okay." Nan Wu nodded, and followed without the slightest hesitation. After all, she had no choice. On the city square in the center of Shijing City, there is a magnificent space elevator connecting the city with the dome outside the atmosphere. The building, which looks like the jade pillar of the sky in the myth of Kyunkan, is not only a cultural landscape of the famous galaxy, but also a means of transportation for a very small number of privileged classes. Only those approved by the Kyunkan group are qualified to go to the Sky Dome through the space elevator, stand on top of Xiaojing, and control the huge power that radiates the entire galaxy. Nan Wu and Nan Yujin are just such a privileged class. When the two came to the door of the elevator, the guard in charge opened the door for them respectfully. "The identity verification is complete, Mr. Nan Yujin, Mr. Nan Wu, please come in." After passing the guard at the gate, Nan Wu mocked softly, "Yesterday they told me that my pass has not yet been registered, so even if they know my identity, they can't let me take the elevator. What are the rules? There are exceptions. Didn't expect the elevator pass to be registered so quickly? Or did the rules of the vault change overnight?" Nan Yujin sighed, "Wu, don't be influenced by such trivial matters. The eldest brother passed away too suddenly, and the power transfer has not yet been completed, and you are still young. Someone inside and outside the family will definitely try to make trouble. But the elder, the rules set by the council are still in place, and you are still the first heir of the family, so as long as you don't mess yourself up, all of this is just a case of scabies. Compared with the storms and waves you will face after you officially take over the power, nothing is worth mentioning right now. Nan Wu said seriously, I understand. So don't think too much, with me here, you won't let those jumping clowns be proud for too long. This time, go up and greet a few leaders first, this is also a good start for you to gradually take over power in the future. Not long after, the two walked along the elevator passage to the dome outside the atmosphere. After the elevator door opened, Nan Wu saw a quaint landscape. A wooden archway stood in front of it, with the word Sky Dome written on it in vigorous handwriting. Behind the archway is a lush landscape garden. The Kyunkan group has reproduced the natural scenery on the surface of the planet in the space station in an almost extravagant way. The design and cultivation of every plant and tree have been carefully crafted, making people feel refreshed and happy at a glance, without any the feeling of narrowness in general space buildings. The lush flowers and trees in the garden are surrounded by exquisite small buildings with red bricks and jade tiles. On the edge of the garden, you can still vaguely see the bustling street in the shape of a market. This is the living area on the top of the sky, which is exclusively used by a very small number of privileged classes. Members of the board of directors of the group, such as Nan Heli, will have their own exclusive rooms in the garden. After crossing this landscape garden and coming to the upper floor of the dome, you will see a solemn golden red hall. The wooden and stone structure building stands on high stone steps, which makes people feel inexplicable at first glance. Pressure. There are dense buildings on the left and right sides of the main hall, which are the office area of the dome, where dignitaries from all over the galaxy discuss strategic decisions that can affect hundreds of billions of people. Yesterday, Nan Wu attended the high-level meeting on the group's financial strategy adjustment in the conference hall. Nanming Capital, as the leading financial giant in the group, should have a decisive say in the financial strategy. However, after the whole meeting, Nan Wu didn't even have the right to listen to the whole meeting. Respectfully invited out of the venue. Chapter 77. According to the constitution of Kyunkan Group, Nan Wu, as the heir of Nanming Capital, is indeed only qualified to attend the halftime meeting before officially taking over the power. However, even so, she is the heir of the four major families after all, and demanding her with rigid rules is a great contempt in itself. Outside the venue, Nan Wu even felt more dangerous and helpless than when he was ambushed in the asteroid belt. At this time, revisiting the old place, she couldn't help but feel a lot of emotion in her heart. What will be staged next will most likely be a scene in which the clowns are defeated under the light of the wise and mighty Nan Yujin. Although she knows that all of this may be just a script, she actually has some expectations in her heart. And Nan Wu didn't hide this feeling, rather, it was easier to create a harmless image by revealing this eagerness for revenge. Second uncle, next, do you want to seek justice for what happened yesterday? Nan Yujin sighed, instead of acting as a radiant hero, he said, Wu, please remember that we are not here to seek justice. In the sky, justice is not important. If you are obsessed with the so-called fairness will inevitably be looked down upon by others. Nan Wu showed a puzzled expression. Nan Yujin said, these words are indeed a bit unpleasant, but just imagine, if the sky is really fair, then why have the four major families dominated the long history of the galaxy? Because the four major families are people better than others. This question was somewhat beyond Nan Wu's expectations, it directly touched the foundation of the Kyunkan Group's rule, and it was undoubtedly a question beyond the outline. Nan Yujin smiled, and asked again, how can there be justice within the four major families? For example, is the primogeniture system fair? This question made Nan Wu's heart skip a beat. Nan Yujin laughed, for me, it is indeed fair. My eldest brother is much better than me, and I am convinced. But in the long history of the four major families, there are countless unqualified eldest sons. The fact the primogeniture system, which was implemented smoothly in the world, accounts for at most half of the countless power transfers, and there are countless usurpers and plotters, because the inheritance system itself is not fair. Nan Yujin paused for a moment, as if observing Nan Wu's reaction. Seeing her listening seriously, she smiled and said, but what if it's unfair? There are so many talented and bold people in history, and I haven't seen anyone go to overthrow this injustice, so it doesn't matter whether it is fair or not. Nan Wu asked, then what is important? Nan Yujin reached out and tapped her temple, it's here. Nan Wu showed a puzzled expression, wisdom. Wrong, it's an idea. Nan Yujin said, wisdom will only make people good at calculating, obsessed with pros and cons, and then pursue the so-called justice. But justice itself is a fundamental shake to the rule of the four major families. So compared from wisdom, people's subjective wishes are more valued on the top of the sky. Nan Wu was even more puzzled, what do you mean? I hope things are done this way, so things are done like this. You don't have to pay attention to the pros and cons, let alone justice and axiom. Words follow the law and do whatever you want. This is the core of the word power. Remember, it is the four major families. The people who hold the power, not the power to hold the four major families, don't be the puppets of the power. Nan Wu only felt his scalp tingle slightly. Does the second uncle really know what he is talking about? Comparing the four major families to tyrants who do whatever they want, is he trying to subvert the ruling foundation of the Qian galaxy? And, why are you saying these things to yourself at this time? Want to encourage yourself to be extravagant and lustful, annoy the board of directors, and disqualify you from inheriting? Or did he have some daring behavior that needed this kind of excuse to excuse him? For a moment, Nan Wu only felt that the thoughts in his mind were chaotic, and he was at a loss for a while. Seeing this, Nan Yujin smiled as expected, is it difficult to understand? That's right. At your age, what you learn and see is mostly the old-fashioned theories in books. It's too early to understand the reality. Brother, I'm afraid I haven't had time to teach you his real skills. Hearing this, Nan Wu couldn't help retorting, father is not that kind of person. Nan Yujin stopped and fell silent. After a long time, the middle-aged man shook his head and said earnestly, I have always felt ashamed of my elder brother all these years, so some things are actually not easy to say. But worry-free, now that my elder brother is not here, only I can tell you some harsh words, I hope you can forgive me. Nan Wu laughed back angrily, and said softly, second uncle, please don't hesitate to teach me. I admit that my eldest brother is a very good leader. He handles most of the affairs of the family fairly and decently, but he is a member of the board of directors after all, and he is a member of the board of directors who is recognized by the elder council of the four major families. Therefore, he is not qualified to be alone. He has no choice when it comes to being a tyrannical and arbitrary tyrant. For example, Nan Yujin said, for example, members of the board of directors are not only responsible for their own housework, but also responsible for the strategy of the entire group. When those unreasonable strategic decisions are made, your father, as a member qualified to vote, also needs to be responsible. Nan Wu frowned, feeling speechless. Baihe Group had a debt crisis 5 years ago. Qinkan Group launched its propaganda machine and mobilized a large number of private forces to fill the hole. In the end, only half of the funds were actually implemented, and the remaining half was distributed to the pockets of the directors. And the eldest brother, the manor renovation project in the asteroid belt, was using that money. Nan Wu's eyes widened in disbelief, this is impossible. Impossible. If you only look at the financial report, of course you will find it impossible. But don't forget that Nanming Capital has the most brilliant accountant in the entire galaxy, and any accounting can be done seamlessly. But that's right, considering the basic logic, you will also find it impossible. Elder brother is the leader of the family, with countless assets under his name, why use such means to transform a manor? However, if elder brother does not take the money, it will. What do you think of the person who reached out and took it? He is not short of money, so is it true that everyone on the board of directors is not short of money? Besides, who would think that too much money will hurt their hands? Therefore, it is an inevitable choice to join forces with others. When Nan Wu heard this, his fists were clenched until his knuckles turned white, his mind was buzzing, and he felt that the world he knew was collapsing piece by piece. Although everything just now was just empty talk from Nan Yujin, Nan Wu knew very well that the other party was not lying. No one can take the position of the leader of the four major families cleanly. This point, as the heir, Nan Wu, is clearer than anyone else. In fact, in order to get back the inheritance her father left in the manor, she did not hesitate to contact the pirates in private, which had already broken the laws in the Qian galaxy. Seeing that Nan Wu was speechless, Nan Yujin said, I know it's hard for you to accept it for a while, after all, this is just empty talk from a middle-aged uncle who has a bad relationship with your father. No, that's not what I meant. It's okay, don't force it, but you have to face some things sooner or later, so come with me first. Chapter 78. Nan Yujin led the way first, and came to the buildings next to the main meeting hall. This labyrinth-like complex of buildings is like the brain of the Kyunkan group, in which countless elites are dedicated to giving advice and suggestions to the decision-makers. Many people joke that, compared with the magnificent conference hall, the real key parts of Kyunkan group actually lie in the buildings on the left and right sides. Because with the assistance of those think tanks, even a wild chicken can become a qualified director of the board of directors. And when Nan Weo walked into this building complex, he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Here, as the heir of the Nan family, she has never had the opportunity to set foot in the forbidden area of the board of directors, but at this time, under the leadership of Nan Yujin, it is as if walking on the ground. The guards did not even ask their identities, so they stepped aside respectfully rode. So what does this mean? Nan Yujin is showing off his power on the board? Worryless, don't be so cautious. Nan Yujin walked in front and told the woman behind him without looking back, you are the heir of the Nan family, so you can be more calm. Nan Weo nodded. Nan Yujin explained again, it is true that this is where the most elite think tanks of the Kyunkan group are located, but the think tanks are always just service personnel, and we are the leaders of the Kyunkan group. Their wisdom is only meaningful when it is used by us. Like a computer with amazing performance. Do you expect and respect the computer? Nan Weo took a deep breath and nodded again, I understand. Don't be in a hurry to understand that inheriting the legacy of eldest brother cannot be achieved overnight. Let's take our time and start with the first lesson today. While talking, the two had come to a warehouse-like building. Behind the door stood a desk. Behind the desk was a skinny old man with thinning and grey hair, typing on the keyboard with his hands flying like flying. Nan Yujin smiled and greeted, Nan Kiwen, long time no see. The skinny old man was stunned for a moment, turned his head, pushed the auxiliary lens on the bridge of his nose, adjusted the focus, and saw Nan Yujin's face clearly, so he stood up quickly and greeted earnestly in a hoarse voice, so it's the second young master, it's indeed been a long time. Don't call him a young master, he's already a greasy middle-aged man. Nan Yujin chuckled, but didn't exchange too many pleasantries, but went straight to the point, do you have the minutes of yesterday's meeting here? Nan Kiwen turned his head around, adjusted the focal length of the lens again, and said with a smile, that's what you said, isn't that what we, the secretary of the board of directors, do? Give me a copy of the whole book. It's been a long time since I traveled away from home recently, and I can't keep up with the situation. Okay. Nan Kiwen tapped on the keyboard without hesitation, completed the operations of consulting, exporting, and copying the document, and finally handed over a holographic disc to Nan Yujin. Nan Yujin said, thank you, I will destroy it on time. Haha, the second young master doesn't have to be so rigid, you can watch it whenever you want, anyway, it's not something that should be kept from you. After finishing speaking, Nan Kiwen bowed his head to the copybook again, hunched over and typing on the manuscript. Nan Yujin didn't bother him anymore, and walked out of the room with Nan Weo. As soon as he went out, Nan Weo was amused, and asked curiously, is this okay? The minutes of the board meeting should be top secret documents, right? Nan Yujin handed the hologram disc to Nan Weo, and said, it's top secret, but Nan Kiwen and I have been friends for 30 years, so it's more convenient for me to transfer files from him than elder brother. Now, do you more or less understand what I mean by the word relationship? Nan Weo took the hologram disc and remained silent. Okay, go back and read the minutes slowly, then let's go to the next stop. The next stop Nan Yujin mentioned was a small private courtyard located in the building complex. In the several exquisite and simple buildings in the small courtyard, many staff members are busy before and after running. Nan Yujin warmly greeted everyone, and then found the director of the small courtyard. A middle-aged woman who looked about the same age as him, and said, Nanjing, the person who is in charge of drafting the agenda of the board of directors now, who is it? I need him to help me add a member to the next meeting. Nanjing showed embarrassment, this is a confidential matter, here I. Nan Yujin sighed and said, oh, I know that too, so I came here to bother you. After all, I don't want to bother Elder Yubo because of such a trivial matter. Hearing the words Yubo Yuan Lao, Nanjing's expression froze immediately, as if she had been pinpointed. After a long time, she relaxed and said, well, anyway, the Council of Elders will definitely support you. At present, Mr. Chen Lu from the Secretariat Bureau is in charge of managing the recent board agendas. Don't say I told you. Don't worry, I would betray my family. Nan Yujin smiled and waved goodbye to Nanjing. Walking out of the courtyard, Nan Yujin restrained her smile, and explained to Nan Wu, my relationship with Nanjing is not as good as that of Nan Qiwen, so if I inquire about any news, I have to mention my relationship in the Council of Elders. It's the eldest brother, I'm afraid you don't need to speak up, Nanjing will naturally arrange everything properly, and you don't even need to go to Chen Lu alone. However, I am not the eldest brother, so let's visit Chen Lu next and let him come to help, but luckily I have a good relationship with him. Nan Wu said, second uncle, there's actually no need to trouble yourself. No, it has to be so troublesome. Nan Yujin said firmly, power is not a flower that is placed there until someone is ready to pick it, but a treasure coveted and contested by countless people. If you can't show it as soon as possible, those who are determined to win, those who make waves will intensify. You don't want what happened yesterday to repeat itself, do you? Nan Wu was helpless, nodded and stopped arguing. The next stop is the living area of the Sky Dome, which is the landscape garden. Chen Lu of the Secretariat Bureau is also a member of the Board of Directors. As a heavyweight of the Chen family among the four major families, he has his own independent room in the garden, and he lives here most of the time. Although it is not as vast as those wealthy manors on the ground, the extravagance of the Sky Dome is the ultimate in the exquisite space. The basic necessities of life are unimaginably exquisite, so there are some long-term residents in the garden. After Nan Yujin knocked on the door of Chen Lu's courtyard, she bowed to the hale and hearty old man behind the door, "Old Chen, long time no see." Chen Lu snorted coldly, "Boy from the Nan family, don't come here for such false politeness. If you have anything to say, just speak up." Nan Yujin smiled, "I'm really thirsty after walking all this way, can Mr. Chen enjoy a cup of tea, let's chat while drinking." Chen Lu stared at him for a while, but finally couldn't hold back his face, and scolded with a smile, "Stinky boy, he is already old, and he still has no shape. If you want to rub my tea, there is no door. Only white water, drink or not casual." Nan Yujin said, "Mr. Chen, the white water on your side is all made of natural ice collected from the asteroid belt. If I have the opportunity to drink freely, of course I." "No one asked you to drink freely, just one glass, and then go away." When Chen Lu said this, his brows were completely relaxed, and a smile appeared on his face. Afterwards, Chen Lu led the two of them into his reception room. The space is small but thoughtful and meticulous everywhere, from chairs to desks, from showcases to ornamental green plants, every detail in the room is tailor-made for the residents. But on the other hand, this meticulousness will undoubtedly reveal a lot of information about the owner. For example, Chen Lu has a bad lumbar spine, so the cushions on the seat are extra soft, he is left-handed, so the holographic tablet and office utensils on the desk are placed on the left, 100 physical currencies. The use of these personal information can be said to be big or small, and usually only those who are particularly close will be entertained. So Nan Wu was really taken aback, she really didn't expect that the second uncle had such a wide network of contacts, even the members of the Chen family would sell his face. In her memory, her father had complained many times that the members of the Chen family were very difficult to get along with. Is this what Nan Yujin wants to show off? After Nan Yujin was seated, he went straight to the point and said, "Mr. Chen, besides asking for tea and water, the most important thing is to ask for a board seat for my niece." Chen Lu took a sip of tea and sighed softly, "You really can talk, boy." The Chen family and the Nan family have had constant trade frictions for decades, why should I please the girls of the Nan family? Nan Yujin smiled and said, "Because Mr. Chen is very private, there may be some conflicts between the Chen family and the Nan family, but Mr. Chen invited me, the Nan family, to drink tea. The word public and private makes you use it so arbitrarily. And there is only white water here, no tea. Don't try to climb along the pole." Chen Lu glared at Nan Yujin, and then said, "You are right, family affairs. Returning to family affairs, the second and third child have kept me out of the group's decision-making for so many years, and I have no obligation to think too much about their face. From my personal point of view, Nan Heli's daughter must be excluded from the board of directors, this is petty behavior. The four major families have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, and they have long been inseparable from each other. Temporarily suppressing them is the most out of idleness, but they will return sooner or later. Why bother? Nan Yujin's smile became more enthusiastic. So, Mr. Chen, do you agree? Chen Lu said, the official seat on the board of directors must be reviewed and voted by the board of directors collectively. It is useless to tell me. At most, I will let her be a non-voting member. I can't thank you enough. Nan Yujin secretly winked at Nan Wu while speaking. Nan Wu sighed secretly, followed behind Nan Yujin and saluted Chen Lu to thank him. Let's save the red tape, it's not a big deal. Chen Lu waved his hand and said, it's a pity that your father's manner is there. Nan Wu couldn't help being stunned upon hearing this. Fortunately, Nan Yujin took over the conversation in time, it's just temporarily controlled by Kyunkan security, not to mention that for us, that kind of manner can be rebuilt at any time. Chen Lu smiled and said, okay, then when the new manor is built, I'll give you a caddy of tea as a gift. Grateful. The conversation ended here. Nan Yujin drank the white water in the cup, and gave Nan Wu a wink. Nan Wu also drank the water in the glass, got up and said goodbye. Chapter 79. After leaving Chen Lu's small courtyard, Nan Yujin laughed and said, congratulations, Wu, Chen Lu is easier to talk to than I expected. With his support, you won't be coldly received in the board of directors anymore. No. Don't look at him losing power in the Chen family's political struggle, but he is still the elder of the Chen family and has a strong influence. The fact that you can get Chen Lu's support is enough to shake the positions of many neutral parties. Nan Wu had to admit that Nan Yujin was right. Even if the other party has ulterior motives, being able to help him win an ally like Chen Lu is very beneficial to him. However, Nan Wu did not believe that such a good thing would come for nothing, without any price. Nan Yujin had released his kindness, and it was Nan Wu's turn to give back. However, at this time, Nan Wu really couldn't think of how to give back to this second uncle who has all eyes and hands, but when she fell into deep thought, she heard Nan Yujin say again, Wu, Mr. Chen mentioned you just now. Father's manner, can you hear what he really wants to say? Nan Wu was startled when he heard the words, and then replied calmly, it's not like talking about the manner itself, it's more like exchanging secret signals. That's right, what Chen Lu and I were talking about just now wasn't DUI 9527's manner, but the distribution of spoils. Split the spoils? The money from Baihe Group. That's right, as I said before, the debt crisis of Baihe Group has made many people in the four major families get soft. Among them, the stolen money distributed by the eldest brother was used to renovate the manor. The stolen money obtained by Chen Lu was used in the asteroid belt. Set up a natural ice mining station to supply the most expensive water resources in the galaxy to a few members of the Chen family. When Nan Wu heard this, he couldn't help feeling disgusted in his heart. Although rationally, she has already approved of Nan Yujin's rhetoric. As the head of the family, it is impossible for the father to rule the family with two hands. The manor that carried her fond memories was probably built on countless stolen money. But emotionally, she really doesn't want to talk about this topic too much. So Nan Wu diverted the topic very lightly. I see, but it seems to be the same as ordinary water when I drink it. Does there need to be a difference? Nan Yujin asked, as long as it is precious and rare enough, it will naturally become the most respected jade liquid. That glass of water is soaked in the word power. After finishing speaking, Nan Yujin said again, of course, this is just the opinion of a person like me who is not on the table. In fact, Chen Lu's mining station submitted a report, demonstrating that the natural ice in the asteroid belt containing rich trace elements, long-term drinking can prolong life and prevent all diseases. Nan Wu smiled, it does have the style of the Chen family. Seeing that the topic has turned to an irrelevant field, Nan Wu finally breathed a sigh of relief. And looking at Nan Yujin at this time, the gentle, slightly fat middle-aged man seemed to have become more cordial. No matter what purpose he has, at this moment, in the capital of this icy dry galaxy, he is the only one he can rely on. After that, the two talked and laughed briefly about the vanity of the Chen family and even the four major families, which made the atmosphere between uncle and nephew more harmonious. Nan Yujin didn't return to the topic until he was completely away from the small courtyard of the Chen family. Anyway, in view of the face of sharing spoils together in the past, Chen Lu's relationship can be regarded as being used. At the beginning of the next meeting, you can at least attend the whole process. As for voting rights, it may have to wait. Nan Wu said, it doesn't matter, I believe that what belongs to me, no one can take it away. Well, what is needed is this determination. Nan Yujin nodded in approval, but seemed calm about Nan Wu's declaration, as if it was indeed a matter of course, and there was no need to comment, and it seemed that Nan Wu's determination was not worth mentioning at all. After that, let's go to the big brother's room to rest. But Nan Wu shook his head, no need, after I officially inherit my father's inheritance, I can move in openly. Now moving in is nothing more than relying on your relationship with second uncle, I don't like it very much. However, Nan Yujin couldn't help being stunned. She was silent for a long time, moved her lips a few times, and then sighed, your ambition is higher than I thought. This is very good, really good. If brother can see the way you are now, I think you will also feel gratified. Nan Wu lowered his head with a melancholy expression on his face. After a while, Nan Yujin asked again, then what are you going to do in the future? I plan to go back to Suan directly. The meeting of the board of directors has ended, so there is no point in staying in Shijing. Why is it meaningless? Nan Yujin said, Xiaojing is the capital of the Qian galaxy. More than half of the elders of the four major families live in Xiaojing. If you want to successfully inherit the legacy of your eldest brother, it is very important to get the approval of the elders. Nan Wu said, I know. But now I am not qualified to have an equal dialogue with the elders of other families. Staying in Shijing is nothing more than running around with the second uncle. Of course, I am not doubting the second uncle's ability, but as the heir of the family, I can't always hide behind my second uncle. When my father inherited the family business, he also relied on his own strength to gain everyone's approval step by step. Nan Yujin fell into silence again after hearing the words, and sighed after a long time, I understand, you have considered this issue more deeply and properly than me. Hey, no wonder it was the eldest brother who inherited the family business. A lazy boy, it's far worse than him. Second uncle, you. Okay, since you have this determination, then go back as soon as possible and integrate the strength of Nanming capital. Although there will be many ups and downs, I believe you will be able to overcome all difficulties and become the head of the family as smoothly as your elder brother did back then. People. Thank you, second uncle. Nan Yujin smiled, I still have some things to deal with in Shijing, and I may not be able to accompany you home. By the way, why are you here alone? Where is Nan Zaizu? Hearing this name, Nan Wu's body suddenly became stiff. She really didn't want to mention this topic, but Nan Yujin's question was reasonable and unavoidable. For a moment, she didn't know how to answer. Nan Yujin said, I'm sorry, I didn't intend to inquire about your family affairs, but I was a little curious about why the always nagging housekeeper would let you stay in Shijing alone. Although the headquarters of the Nan family is in Suan, there are enough people left to look after you. Anyway, sorry, I won't ask any more. This attitude of retreating into advance made Nan Wu even more embarrassed. If Nan Yujin was just an unrelated passerby, she could of course nod her head and say without asking. But he is not a passerby, but the help that Nan Wu needs to rely on most now. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is her backbone, and he has just released his kindness and helped Nan Wu solve a huge problem. What's more, even if Nan Wu didn't say anything, wouldn't Nan Yujin not be able to find out? Things are almost on the table, and he can review the whole picture by asking anyone casually. Therefore, Nan Wu had no way to avoid the other party's question. Chapter 80. After being silent for a long time, Nan Wu finally said, Second uncle is overthinking, it's not that I don't trust second uncle, but the matter is really hard to tell. Nan Yujin said, then, are you going to talk in elder brother's room? After all, this is not a place to talk. Nan Wu glanced at the space elevator that was close at hand, and shook his head, no, it will spread sooner or later. I guess it has already started on the top of the sky, so there is nothing to hide. Nan Zaizu is a traitor, he arranged for pirates to attempt to assassinate me, and also froze my bank account. In fact, I am in a hurry to go back now, and I also want to unfreeze my account as soon as possible, because other application channels are blocked, haha. In the end, Nan Wu even found it ridiculous, and couldn't help laughing. The heir of the dignified Nan family has her account frozen by her own bank, and she needs to go to the bank to apply for unblocking. Is there such a dilapidated and wronged heir of the four major families in the world? Nan Yujin was dumbfounded when she heard the words, and she was stunned for a long time before she couldn't help saying, Wu, are you serious? Does second uncle think I'm going to joke about this kind of thing? Nan Zaizu has served Big Brother for nearly 30 years. Just like Li Qiang, he is a personal servant approved by the Senate Council. How could he betray the Nan family? Nan Yujin's mention of Li Qiang made Nan Wu's heart ache even more. The maid who was loyal to her had lost contact with her for a long time. Quncan Security, who was supposed to be responsible for her safety, covered up all the facts. However, Nan Wu was too eager to ask questions. After all, she hired the pirates, and she was not innocent on this issue. Nan Yujin sighed, during my absence, what happened at home? Why did everything change? Forget it, I won't stay in Shijing anymore, let's go home together. On the way, tell me about the matter in detail. Now is not the time to worry about your face, worry free, your life safety is more important than anything else. Nan Wu said, I see. Half a day later, on Nan Yujin's private spaceship, Nan Wu finally reported what happened to her recently. She worked hard to control her emotions, and described a series of heavy blows in a straightforward manner, as if she was telling other people's stories with an indifferent attitude. However, Nan Yujin, who was the audience, was sweating and breathing rapidly. It's just unbelievable. In the end, Nan Yujin concluded, brother's death is already unbelievable enough, and these experiences behind you are even more. What are the members of the Council of Elders thinking? Nan Wu smiled sarcastically, I also want to know, so I have been asking Nan Zais who to ask. After all, he is the one who can directly contact the Senate Council, not me, but you also saw it in the end. Nan Yujin sighed, brother really should have let you take over a few years earlier, otherwise, why would Nan Zais cut off the dialogue channel with the Senate Council? Nan Wu's smile was even more sarcasm, it should be said, if the Council of Elders really wanted to see me, why would Nan Zais stop talking to me? This time, Nan Yujin couldn't refute, it really doesn't make sense, but it's useless to think about it here. I'll try to find a way to ask after I get home. Although I'm not the heir of the family, at least I'm with a few. The old guy still has a little friendship, so if you try hard, you should be able to get some words out. Second uncle, thank you very much. You've said it, you're welcome, and it's not that this matter has nothing to do with me. The Council of Elders can condone the accidental death of the elder brother, and can condone Nan Zais mere subordinates to plan to assassinate you. Of course, they can also condone others to kill me. We are the closest relatives, and we are all hurt. After a pause, Nan Yujin asked again, also, what happened to the Silver Knights? Nan Wu responded subconsciously, who knows, Li Yu will change his name every so often, and it was still called the Silver Sect before. Oh, sorry, I mean, that organization has always been unpredictable. I never thought that I would borrow the power of an inexplicable pirate organization. Nan Yujin corrected, that's not some pirate organization. The name of Bian has spread throughout the planet as early as when my elder brother and I were young. The cooperation between the Nan family and Bian also has a very long history. They rely on the Nan family to obtain various survival resources, the Nan family relies on them to maintain the stability of the deserted area, and occasionally entrusts them to do things that are inconvenient for them. But I've never heard anyone say that Bian's power is so strong that with a self-reformed spaceship, breaking out of the ambush circle and repelling the opponent, this kind of thing is the trump card of Quncan security ships can't do it either. Nan Wu laughed at himself, it seems that their fees are expensive, which is really reasonable. Nan Yujin said, generally speaking, such a team can't be recruited with much money. He is willing to help you. It can be said that it is the shadow of the eldest brother, or it can be said that it is your luck. But luck alone is far from enough. It's not enough, you need to grasp this power more tightly. In the current abnormal situation, silver is enough to be your trump card to win the game. Nan Wu asked, second uncle thinks so highly of Bian. Whether you are high or not, you have the answer in your heart. If it weren't for Bian, it would be very difficult for you to pass Nan Zai's test. And the risks you will face later must come from the dark side. Dealing with the dark side, I'm afraid no one is more professional than Bian. At least you can't trust Quncan security, right? When Nan Wu heard about Quncan security, he couldn't help clenching his fists, and a burst of hatred surged in his heart. Because Nan Heli died under the strict protection of Quncan security, Li Qiang, who was closest to her, also disappeared because of Quncan security. So, what should I do? Tell Li Yu frankly. Nan Yujin shook his head, no, in the final analysis, Bian is not his own. As far as I know, whether it is the elder brother or the head of the Nan family, there is a limit to the cooperation with Bian. Trust each other with reservations. In fact, for those who grew up in the deserted area, we, the children of the family, are untrustworthy objects, so he is also quite cautious in contact with you, right? Nan Wu admitted, even the discounted price is very high. Besides, after experiencing the asteroid belt's ambush, I'm afraid Bian's trust in you will be greatly reduced. After all, they are also victims, and you can even be regarded as half of the perpetrators. At this time, your blunt confession will only let you down. The other party doubts your real intentions. I think you might as well slow down, just like cultivating customers, and accumulate mutual trust step by step. Nan Wu was thoughtful, in other words, keep issuing commissions to get familiar with each other. Yes, in this process, the people in Bian can gradually get closer to the truth of the matter, and also to the core power circle of the Nan family. Of course it can only be close, we can't really bring outsiders in. In this way, we can gradually earn the other party's trust. Chapter 81. When the Silver Knights were about to welcome a big client, Sean ushered in a substantial vacation. When he woke up from his overworked slumber, he found that he had returned to the underground base of the Red Seeing Squad, and there was a message from Li Yu in the bracelet. Congratulations, you have won the vacation time for the next 2 weeks, please rest at ease in the base, get ready for the next round of overtime. Of course Sean didn't want to waste 2 weeks on vacation. After a long talk with Li Yu, he couldn't settle down at all. However, when he wanted to leave the base, he was stopped by Enping. I'm sorry, but the vacation is mandatory. During this time, please rest in the base honestly and don't run around. Sean was taken aback immediately, so I was imprisoned. Enping scratched his head and explained, in the past, due to various reasons, many overtime madmen appeared in the Silver Organization. In just a few years it turned into a huge pension. It's so unfriendly to the organization that vacations are now mandatory. When Xiao En heard this, he didn't know whether to admire Bian, a non-governmental organization that many people regarded as pirates, whose welfare policy included pensions, or whether to condemn it for causing such a serious tragedy. But in any case, this regulation is an obstacle for Sean. It is true that performing 2 missions in a row exhausted him physically and mentally, and a sound sleep would only restore half of his energy at most, but he really had no time to waste on vacation. The truth of Nan Heli's death is still hidden behind the mist, the safety of the master is still unknown, and the $1 owed by him has not been reduced. There are still many things to do. However, Xiao En was about to fight with Enping, but he heard the other party ask, do you have anything important? Of course there is. With who you are now, can you do it? Sean was at a loss for words. As a Jedi apprentice, Sean will not underestimate himself, but on the other hand, everything he has experienced in the Dry Galaxy has made him understand the truth not to be arrogant. Even the omnipotent master is in trouble. A mere Jedi apprentice is indeed too weak to rely on his own strength. Enping Yu said earnestly, so you must rely on the help of others, so just imagine, will your impatience help you to get help from others? Will other people follow you when they see you forgetting to eat and sleep and not caring about your health? Sean was lost in thought again. Enping said, Sean, do you know who is the most annoying person in an organization, such as a company? Sean tried to answer, the boss who forced overtime. It's an alternative answer, but it's not the correct answer. Enping said, the most annoying thing is to work harder than you, and almost unconditionally cater to your favorite colleagues. Sean was a little puzzled, why? The boss has all kinds of hateful things, but the boss and the employees are not in the same class, and people have long been accustomed to the harshness of the superior. After all, they still have to rely on the boss to get their wages. Where can the hatred go? But it's different when you're in the same class, you're obviously in the same class as yourself, but you can't share the same hatred, or even stab a knife in the back. This kind of betrayal is the most likely to generate hatred. Xiao En was even more puzzled, work harder and make progress, and cater to what you want, why is it considered a stab in the back? Because it shows that you don't work hard enough and don't know how to cater to your wishes. Enping said with a smile, if everyone is a puddle of mud, the boss will have nothing to do with everyone. After all, the law does not rule the crowd. But if someone stands out, the boss there is a reason to punish everyone. On a larger scale, those who work hard to make progress are tantamount to harming the interests of the whole with their own selfishness. Sean is still a little hard to understand. According to Enping, the company's employees are better off eating and waiting to die? In the end, the company went bankrupt, and what did the employees rely on for food? Enping said, it seems that your growth environment is too idealistic, and some simple truths can't be understood. But whether you understand it or not, just remember this conclusion: most ordinary people don't like people around them too much. Fight. The more eager you are, the more likely you are to waste your time. Sean thought about it, and accepted this somewhat absurd theory for the time being. Moreover, Li Yu has already promised to help him collect information, and now what I have to do is to fully trust him. Based on my understanding of Li Yu, if I was in a hurry, it might have the opposite effect. Anping added, Bian has always advocated the combination of work and rest. Even the Hongxing team, which is regarded by many people as a lunatic asylum, everyone will choose to take sufficient rest outside of standard working hours. Sean looked suspiciously at the sweat on Anping's body. Captain, how did you sweat all over your body? Anping said, I just jogged for 20 kilometers and punched a few times. What's wrong? But Anping suddenly smiled again. By the way, it's a rare vacation, do you want to practice with me? Xiaoan wanted to say that he would rather go to the Quncan intranet to find information during his vacation, but before he could answer, Anping suddenly reached forward with his left hand and grabbed his shoulder. Sean subconsciously stretched out his hand to block, but saw Anping's arm bent like a rope in midair, avoiding Sean's block directly, and firmly grasped Sean's shoulder with his palm. Is this really bent? Sean took a closer look, only to be surprised to find that Anping's arm not only twisted in the direction of the anti-joint, but even extended a little, which is why it took on a rope-like shape. Anping smiled with ease and said, I'm surprised. Sean was indeed taken aback, nodded and said, I didn't expect you to be proficient in acrobatics, Captain. But if you can reduce the cold sweat on your forehead, it seems that you really have the temperament to do things with ease. Anping finally couldn't hold back his face when he heard the words. He gritted his teeth and said, if you can still handle things with ease when the joints are severely dislocated, then you will be damned. The next moment, Su Bo's voice came from outside the door again, Captain, I have a panacea here, which can make you more comfortable at any time. Get out. Anping refused without looking back, and by the way, he used his mechanical right hand to return the dislocated arm to its original position, and carefully applied back the ointment. Sean asked, Captain, do you want to teach me to freely control my joints like you? Freedom of control is not something to talk about. I can only make some small movements that catch ordinary people off guard. But these small movements can often determine life and death on the battlefield. Just imagine if I was holding a dagger in my hand just now, what would happen to you now? Sean imagined it for a while, and found that the result was indeed not very optimistic. Although Anping's dislocation method will seriously weaken the strength of his moves, so that when his palm falls on Xiaoan's shoulder, there is almost no impact at all. But if Anping held a sharp dagger, he could easily cut the opponent's throat without much effort. Thinking of this, Sean did have some interest in Anping's acrobatics. As we all know, the Jedi Knights hold the sharpest weapons in the galaxy. Seeing that Xiaoan was interested, Anping added, besides, I have some other acrobatics that I can teach you, such as... Before the words fell, Anping's left fist, which had just been dislocated and still covered with ointment, came to Xiaoan like lightning. The speed was so fast that the Jedi apprentice almost had no time to react. When he subconsciously tilted his head back, Anping's fist whined the hair on his forehead had already been blown. Sean couldn't help recalling the entry test he went through when he first came to the Red Apricot team. At that time, Anping's explosive power had already surprised Sean. This time, although Anping's movements seemed gentle, but the speed was actually very fast. More than the time of testing. From this, Sean concluded that if he and the captain started a fight, unless the original force and the power of the lightsaber were brought into full play, no matter how hard they fought, they would be defeated. Although Anping was in a mess when he won the test, it was just that he didn't care about being in a mess. In essence, he was really comfortable. However, even though Xiaoan had greatly overestimated the captain's combat effectiveness, when he really experienced Anping's fancy acrobatics, he found that the opponent's strength was still beyond his expectations. Chapter 82. Anping's acrobatic classroom is located in a small training ground in the underground base. This training ground was tailor-made by Anping for himself, and he spent a lot of effort. As soon as he entered the door, Sean could appreciate the extraordinariness of it. Although the training ground is small, the internal facilities are highly complex, and obstacles made of various high-strength metals almost occupy most of the space of the training ground. The open and spacious place in the arena is about 20 to 30 square meters, surrounded by half-height obstacles, which looks a bit like a venue for indoor fighting competitions. The narrow and cramped place is divided into several parts. There is a courtyard that is only 4 or 5 square meters, but is more than 10 meters high. There is a narrow passage that is half a meter wide and more than 1 meter high. It becomes a small square with countless finely divided spaces. What does this mean? Sean was a little confused. Anping said, environmental training room. If you think about it, you know that the actual combat environment and the ring environment are generally very different. And this is the training ground I designed to simulate the actual combat environment. Sean is highly suspicious of this. As a Jedi apprentice, he has experienced many battles, but it is really rare to see such a strange environment. Anping saw Xiao En's doubts, and said, in 100 actual battles, as long as there is such a wonderful environment once, it will make you remember it for life. And when you have experienced hundreds or thousands of actual battles, you will want to put all of them together. Experience the wonderful environment in advance. Well, no matter how much you talk, it's better to actually do it once. Are you ready? As a result, before Sean could answer, Anping had already made a move first. This time it was Anping's metal prosthesis that took the lead. Taking the elbow joint as the axis and driven by the electromagnetic force, Anping punched a heavy and powerful punch. Of course, Sean would not block it head-on with flesh and blood, and immediately took 2 steps back to dodge. And Anping chased after him like a shadow, and the arc-shrouded mechanical arm struck left and right, forcing Xiao En into a panic. During the introductory test that day, Sean used a wonderful joint technique to dismantle Anping's $50,000 mechanical arm. Don't give your opponent an opportunity. And the narrow environment in the training field also made it difficult for Sean to find space to hug Anping, so he could only retreat step by step. After 3 or 2 moves, Xiao En found that Anping had forced him to retreat into the depths of the training ground, and the surrounding obstacles had begun to hinder his actions. Tisk! Sean took a step to the side, and felt a pain in his toe before his footsteps landed. It turned out that there was a square solid metal on the floor under his feet. With this step, Sean directly hit his fragile little toe on the metal, for a while almost broke out in a cold sweat. The instinctive reaction brought about by the intense pain made Sean's dodge reaction a bit slower, and Anping's heavy punch just reached the tip of Sean's nose at this moment. The special smell of high-voltage electricity breaking down the air is already clearly audible. Xiao En shrugged helplessly, forget me as a loser, but here, your geographical advantage is too great, right? Anping said, the terrain here is controlled by the computer. Every time I come here, it will change drastically, so my geographical advantage is not too great. Of course, I have trained here for several years, and I am very familiar with the unfamiliar environment. Resilience is indeed stronger than yours, so, ready to do it again. Sean exhaled lightly and said, of course. However, in the second round of sparring, Sean lost even faster. Knowing that the environment is extremely complex and will have a great impact on the battle, Sean's attention will inevitably be distracted from the environment. The result was that Anping tripped over the ground after shaking his center of gravity with a fake move. The solid metal on the ground almost hit the back of Sean's head. Anping stretched out his hand to pick up Xiao En, who was on the ground, and asked, does it feel particularly uncomfortable? Sean nodded, then shook his head again. Uncomfortable is uncomfortable, but at this time Sean also realized the beauty of this training ground. This is actually similar to the training he received as a young boy. The young boy who wears a helmet to block his vision must use the Force to deal with the shooting of the training ball, which requires the Jedi to fully trust the guidance of the Force and do it in time. Make a correct judgment. Sean's initial training results were not ideal, because his sensitivity to the Force was far inferior to those of the best young disciples in the temple, and he couldn't move in an orderly manner under the guidance of the Force almost as soon as they got started. Dodge and parry all gunshots. But as the training gradually deepened, Sean's grades also improved steadily, until he was selected as an apprentice by Mistima. His grades were not inferior to those outstanding geniuses. Because Sean knows how to learn from each other's strengths, his sensitivity to the Force is a shortcoming, so he can make up for it with his excellent physical fitness, keen thinking ability, and massive actual combat experience. He will accept all kinds of training harder than any other youngsters. He will fully observe and record the trajectory of the training ball. When the guidance of the Force is vague, he will use his own thinking and the muscle memory formed after a lot of practice to go make up for shortcomings. What he has to do now is no different. Sean needs to use all his strength to adapt to this highly complex training ground, and to deal with an opponent whose melee ability is better than his own. The task was daunting, but the harder it was, the more interested Sean was. I'm ready, let's start the third round. Anping was slightly surprised, the mentality is really good, then I will not be polite. While speaking, Anping leaned forward and charged unceremoniously. A powerful grab hugged Xiao En's waist, and then his thick thighs burst out with incredible force, pushing the two of them forward. And not far behind Sean, there happened to be a metal bar protruding horizontally. If it was hit, Sean might have a chest piercing on the spot. However, at the critical moment, Xiao En suddenly reached out and stabbed Anping's eyes, and at the same time, his knees suddenly pressed against Anping's lower abdomen. Anping was taken aback. He never expected that Xiao En would really perform at the actual combat level in the actual battlefield. This kind of eye-catching stunt is absolutely taboo in any formal fighting competition ring, and only there will be no taboos in actual combat. And Xiao En looked young and gentle, he didn't expect to be so proficient in using this sinister trick. In desperation, Anping had no choice but to let go of his hands to block Sean's finger stabs, and raised his knees to block Sean's knee bump. And Xiao En took this opportunity to break away from Anping's grapple, turned sideways, and avoided the metal bar that pierced just right. I'll. Anping was even more surprised, Xiao En actually took the initiative to drill deep into the training ground? Does he feel that he can adapt to the environment better than himself, the owner of the training ground? This kid really has an extraordinary background. With a hint of excitement, Anping immediately chased after him. However, just a few steps into the passage, Anping received a head-on blow. It turned out that Sean was waiting in the passage, hiding in the shadow in the middle of the winding passage, holding a metal strip broken from nowhere in his hand, aiming at Anping's face and stabbing straight at it. Anping encountered an ambush, but he didn't panic, and directly grabbed the metal bar with his prosthetic limb. But at this moment, Xiao En saw that Xiao En loosened the metal strip as he had expected. Taking advantage of Anping's prosthetic limb pressed against his chest and unable to stretch it, he jumped on it and pushed Anping so that his center of gravity was unstable. Then fell. And on the ground of the passage, there are several concave metal blocks as obstacles, with sharp edges and sharp tips, which are good toe killers. And if it falls from above, I am afraid that the internal organs will be injured. At the moment of crisis, Anping let out a low growl, and his legs suddenly swelled up, bursting out with incredible force, together with the iron-like abdominal muscles hidden under the white robe, firmly fixed his body. Sean's all-out attack seemed to hit a steel plate. Instead of shaking Anping, he was recoiled and staggered backwards. Anping didn't miss the opportunity, the metal bar in his hand pointed forward, right in front of Xiao En's eyes. The third round of sparring ended with Anping's victory again, but Anping was not happy about winning, instead he felt a little sweat on his forehead. Just a little bit, he was about to lose to Sean. Although there was indeed an element of carelessness in it, Sean's ability to adapt to the environment far exceeded his expectations. Only 2 rounds passed, and Xiao En has already initially learned to use the environment to attack opponents. Hey, you kid, you're making progress so fast. Sean smiled when he heard the words. His favorite comment is this sentence. As a person who enjoys the process, he always pays more attention to the improvement itself. The brief confrontation just now was the result of Xiao En using all his strength to observe the environment, think about countermeasures, and put them into practice. Although he failed to come back and win in the end, the distance to victory is undoubtedly much closer than before. As long as you do it again, maybe you have a chance. Oh? So active? Don't you need to take a break? Really don't need it. Actually, I recommend you to take a break. Okay, don't rest if you don't rest, let's fight the 4th round. Chapter 83. When Uncle Su ran to the training room board and came to have lunch with Anping and Sean, the muffled sound of fists and kicks was still heard in the training room. The figures of Xiao En and Anping kept intersecting and colliding in the narrow space, and the movements were dizzyingly fast. However, the intertwined and complicated obstacles around them did not affect their rhythm at all, but turned into a boost from time to time, allowing them to make all kinds of unimaginable movements. Not long after, accompanied by a violent metal collision, the battle finally came to an end. Anping used the metal prosthetic to blow away the long stick in Xiao En's hand, and won the victory in unknown number of rounds. Anping shook the metal prosthesis that was still humming, then stretched out his hand to pull up the numb Xiao En, shook his head and said, No, it's not that hard. To guide the muscles to explode beyond the normal strength, you must cooperate the rhythm of breathing. Speaking of which, your kid's muscle mass is a bit unusually high, and you have not learned a special method of exerting force, and you already have so much strength? Are you really a pure-blooded human? Shan didn't answer, just sighed with deep regret. He has obviously strengthened his body with the force, but he still can't overwhelm Anping, and has repeatedly lost in the most direct force collision. This unattractive, sleepy-eyed team leader is really not like a pure-blooded human being. However, after a morning of discussions, Shan also noticed Anping's knack for exerting strength. He can always cooperate with special breathing methods at critical moments, so that his muscles can be exerted supernormally in an instant. Although this kind of outbreak is only in an instant, the key to winning or losing is also in an instant. And every winning moment, Anping can firmly grasp it in his hands. Xiao En feels that this morning's discussion has benefited him a lot. In this training ground with complex terrain, he is much more comfortable than at the beginning. But facing Anping, it was still far from enough. The opponent was like an insurmountable mountain, always able to beat Xiao En just right. However, Xiao En didn't care about the outcome of the duel, even if he lost 100 times, so what? As long as each failure gives him real experience, it's worth it. Moreover, as long as he wins once, there will be a second, third, and many times. Captain, let's do it again. Anping's smile was already numb. Come again? Don't you need to rest? There is no need to work so hard, right? You are on vacation. Shan still maintained a sincere smile, and said, no need, I'm not tired, let alone overworked. And usually I won't be idle when I'm on vacation, I always have to do some training and learning. Anping said calmly, I see, you are really a natural-born workaholic. Shan said, Captain, you still don't forget to jog during your vacation. I think we have a common language with you. While speaking, Shan jumped up slightly, showing an eagerness to try. Anping said, I really have no common language with you. Before the words fell, Shan had already stepped forward and took the initiative to attack. And at this moment, Uncle Su at the door of the training room finally couldn't stand it any longer, and coughed heavily, interrupting the high-spirited Shan. I said you two, enough is enough, it's lunch time. Shan glanced at Uncle Su and said, it's okay, I won't eat. Su Bo said angrily, we will eat if you don't. El Yunnan has been waiting for you in the back kitchen for a long time. Shan looked puzzled, what do you mean? Anping sighed and explained, when the team is on vacation, the support staff in the base will also be on vacation, so we have to rely on ourselves for 3 meals a day. According to the duty schedule, I should indeed take you today and work with El Yunnan on the same shift. Meal? Shan asked, where's the canned food? Su Bo said angrily, it's already finished. And El Yunnan cooks, who dares to propose canned food? Shan thought of El Yunnan's passionate and unquestionable dishes, and suddenly felt chills in his heart. Su Bo sneered and said, understood? So if you don't want to get food poisoning, go to the back kitchen to help. Shan nodded, I see, leave it to me. After Xiao En left, Uncle Su looked at Anping with gloating face, Captain, are you happy? Anping looked at Uncle Su indifferently. After a long time, his body shook slightly, and blood spurted from his mouth. Only then did Uncle Su put away his expression, and hastily stepped forward to put his hand on Anping's wrist, feeling his messy pulse, and then gasped, Captain, do you want to receive a pension? Are you working so hard? Anping said quietly, if you don't fight hard, you will lose. This kid is really evil, and his progress is unimaginable, even more exaggerated than Xiao Chuang back then. I thought I could suppress him in this training ground for at least a month or two, as a result, the boat almost capsized in the morning. Uncle Su scolded, your training this morning has surpassed the normal time for 3 months. Do you really think that you are just a teenager like Xiao En? You. Did you think of Xiao En when you saw him? Anping looked sad, but nodded and admitted, don't you also think of Xiao En? That child is more talented than me, and his brain is more flexible than me. If he has experienced more formal training, if he can lay the foundation in his early years, it needs to be more solid. Seeing Xiao En now, how can people not think of Xiao En? You are also quite old, so let it go if you should let it go. If you work so hard, aren't you afraid of dying from overwork? Anping forced a smile, isn't there still a miracle doctor like you in the base? Bah! Have you ever seen such a miracle doctor who aged 37 years old? Doesn't he take care of you worry-free bastards every day? Every time he heals your wounds, it feels like his life will be shortened. While cursing, Uncle Su counted with his fingers, then took out a few black painted pills from the medicine box, and stuffed them into Anping's mouth. After Anping swallowed the pill, he breathed a sigh of relief, and then changed the topic with a smile. In the holographic commercials of third-rate pharmaceutical companies, there will always be an old expert who looks like you in charge of selling medicines. That's all fake medicine. Captain, you actually compare me with those quack doctors. Anping said, okay, don't bother to talk about me, you'd better make preparations. According to the task assigned by Boss Li, during the 2 weeks of vacation, we will completely remodel this kid, including yours. The teaching task is not easy either. What's not easy? Uncle Su didn't take it seriously. I casually threw him a few sets of my herbal notes and asked him to recite them backwards, so that he won't have to do other things during the 2-week vacation. You should worry about yourself. Seeing that his interest in you is extraordinary, I'm afraid he doesn't have the heart to read my medical books at all. Anping is quite proud. This is the essence of my life's hard work on the basis of the time-honored martial art of heaven and earth. It is only natural that he is interested. Are you still proud? Are you capable of spitting out my pills? Anping suddenly lost his temper, and said, it's okay, it's El Yunan's turn to teach in the afternoon, let her have a headache first. Chapter 84. Anping's wish can be described as beautiful, but unfortunately, El Yunan already felt a headache in the kitchen. What do you want to say? The woman asked impatiently. You are asking me about the source of the spices, and you are stopping me from mixing the sauce. Sean showed the holographic book recipe in his hand and said, I mean, if you don't know how to cook, Deputy Captain, you don't have to force it. I can teach you. When El Yunan heard this, he suddenly felt a burst of boiling anger welling up in his heart, and the blood vessels near his temples were impacted by the rapidly flowing blood, causing a dull pain. You said, I don't know how to cook. With a deep breath, El Yunan's voice seemed cold and distant, and the awe-inspiring killing intent in it made a Kanyuan free-range chicken waiting to be slaughtered in the kitchen shrink back in shock. Deep in the cage. Sean was unafraid, and nodded seriously. After the previous personal tasting and the way you cooked the soup just now, I can conclude with certainty that you, the deputy captain, really know nothing about cooking, and you don't know anything about it. There is no talent at all. Rather, it is in the production of drugs. Before Xiao En could finish his harsh words, El Yunan had already moved his hand unceremoniously. This woman, who was taller than Anping, shook her left arm and slammed a fist at Sean's face. However, Xiao En had just experienced Anping's baptism, and it was the time when he was most sensitive to melee combat. Seeing this, he calmly stretched out his hand to wrap around El Yunan's left wrist. But at this moment, Xiao En caught a glimpse of El Yunan's right hand hanging from her waist, lightly buckling her belt. Sean let go of El Yunan's wrist without hesitation, and dodged sideways. A crimson energy beam rubbed against his shoulder and shot towards the kitchen ceiling, burning a scorched mark on the metal plate. Xiao En glanced at it from the corner of his eye, and was immediately convinced, El Yunan actually shot. That's right. She is the firepower player of the team, not the attacker in close combat. Of course, she doesn't need fists when she can draw a gun. But this is not on the battlefield. Vice Captain, calm down. I'll calm down after you lie down. El Yunan said in a very calm tone, while drawing his gun with his right hand and firing rapidly. Sparks burst into the kitchen, making it a mess. At this time, Sean was very grateful that the rigorous training he had undergone as a child was not in vain. As a Jedi child, even with a special helmet to blind his eyes and ears, he could still avoid the remote control training ball launch under the guidance of the force coming out of the energy beam. What's more, he is now a disciple of the Jedi Master, and his skill is far better than that of his childhood. The only problem is that El Yunan's shooting skills are much trickier than the remote control training ball back then. The firepower is much faster than the training ball. Sean was forced to panic almost instantly, and had to use the limited furniture and facilities in the kitchen as a cover to avoid the sharp edge. El Yunan seemed to be really angry. While shooting, she carefully chose the shooting position, which could not only compress Sean's dodging space, but also prevent Sean from approaching her. Sean only hit a few times before he felt that his room for maneuver was getting smaller and smaller, and it was only a matter of time before he was shot. At this moment, Xiao En couldn't help feeling that El Yunan seemed to be a thick-skinned person, but in essence he was undoubtedly thick and thin. Even when she was furious, she was impeccable in all details related to the battle. It's a pity that this ability was used by her to target an outspoken teammate. Shan hid behind a stove, thinking 1,000 times in his mind, trying to find a way out of trouble. He nimbly picked up a table knife that had fallen from the ground, and then calculated Yunan's position, considering giving him a little disturbance in a parabolic manner. As a result, before he finished his thoughts, he saw a round metal ball approaching him in a graceful parabola. Shan, who is well-read and knowledgeable, immediately recognized that it was Yunan's self-made flash bomb. Fuck! At the same time, strong light bloomed. As an extraordinary fireman, Yunan's grasp of timing can be described as exquisite. The flash bomb detonated in front of Xiaoan without any delay at all. The impact of strong light and strong earthquake is enough to make any normal person lose the ability to resist on the spot. After throwing the flash bomb, Yunan cautiously approached. With the movement of the position and angle of view, Yunan quickly saw Xiaoan's exposed leg. She raised the pistol, hesitated for a moment, but finally did not refill the gun. However, when Yunan circled to the front, he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Because Xiaoan, who was supposed to be unconscious, seemed to be a hunter waiting in ambush by the trap, waiting for Yunan to come to his door. The moment Yunan circled around, Xiaoan threw out the table knife in his hand and stabbed Yunan's hand holding the gun. In an instant, Yunan fired 2 shots in a row. The table knife thrown by Shan was shot down in the air, and the other shot was close to Shan's shoulder and landed on the stove. Thanks to Shan dodging fast enough, otherwise it would have landed on the chest up. But Shan was able to dodge once, but he couldn't dodge the second time. When Yunan pointed the pistol at Shan again, he had no room to move when he was sitting on the ground, so he could only raise his hands and surrender. "Vice Captain, I admit defeat, calm down." Yunan did calm down a bit. In fact, when Xiaoan threw the throwing knife, she even broke out in cold sweat on her back. At this time, looking at Xiaoan who raised his hands in surrender, Yunan found that most of the anger that was still full of boiling in him had dissipated unknowingly. So she stopped entanglement, retracted the pistol, and stretched out her hand to pull Shan up from the ground. "Sorry, I just got angry." Hearing this, Xiaoan finally let out a sigh of relief. "It's okay, I should have expected this to happen." "What do you mean by that?" Yunan raised his eyebrows, feeling that the anger was about to return to his heart. Shan wisely changed the topic. "Vice Captain, do you have any knack for rapid fire? The accuracy is really amazing." Yunan snorted. "Sarcasm? No matter how accurate you are, you dodge it. And you throw the throwing knife with your eyes closed, it's not much worse than my rapid fire." Xiaoan smiled and said, "After all, I did the calculation mentally and unintentionally. I thought that the throwing knife would be a sure hit. I didn't expect your interception to be so accurate. There's nothing difficult about it. As long as the flying object comes in front of you, as long as you react in time, you can use your muscle memory to shoot flawlessly. Of course, you need to put a little effort into training and pay attention to a little bit of talent." Yunan as he spoke, his attention gradually turned to the explanation of shooting skills, and the anger just now seemed to be just an illusion. After spending a lot of time explaining the tricks of rapid fire, Yunan also raised his own question. "You were just shot with a flash bomb by me, and you lay down on the ground and pretended to be dead, so you are not afraid that I will shoot you directly in the leg?" Shan said, "Think about it, but it's just a pain, and it's completely tolerable. After all, the deputy captain, your gun doesn't have actual lethality, right?" Yunan touched the handle of the gun in surprise. "Can you see it?" "Well, it can be seen from the time you fired the first shot that the scorched marks on the ceiling are much thinner than the marks left by conventional blaster guns. Moreover, I believe that the deputy captain will not really hold the lethal weapon aimed at one's own family." Yunan smiled. "That's true." Shan frowned, feeling that this sentence sounded a little out of breath, and he didn't know if it was an illusion. And at this moment, Uncle Su's exclamation came from the kitchen door. "I rely on Yunan, why are you going crazy? Shan is still a child. Do you understand the truth of childish speech? And you expect him to be like the captain's dog licking, even if you make holes in him, do you have no regrets?" Su Bo's heartfelt words made Yunan, who had already calmed down, feel the burning of anger again. And the genius doctor of the team still didn't know whether to live or die, and stomped his feet in front of the door. "Nan, I'm not talking about you, how long do you have to remember what happened back then? Xiaoan is afraid to cry when he sees you like this. And I also to tell you frankly, you are really bad at cooking. Except for Xiaoan, a child who was poisoned by drugs and lost his sense of taste, no one else can stand your cooking. Yunan was silent for a while, and directly chose to draw out his gun and shoot. This time, of course it didn't fail. The atmosphere in the restaurant was embarrassing and cold, everyone was silently picking up simple canned meals, without the sense of happiness that enjoying delicious food should have. And in the huge space, only the monotonous sound of tableware clashing, and Uncle Su's slight groans echoed. The 37-year-old genius doctor stretched out his hand to cover his chest, and kept moaning. The place where Yunan shot him not long ago, although there was no real injury, it was really painful. But besides groaning, Uncle Su really didn't dare to stand up and protest a word. Uncle Su also deeply understands the so-called self-inflicted crimes. The name Xiaoan is a taboo within the team, and it is directly related to the psychological trauma of the two captains and vice-captains. For Yunan, it is of a particularly serious nature. Before Enping made a careless remark, he violated this taboo, and was shot directly in the chest by Yunan. Fortunately, the incident happened inside the base, and the rescue was timely enough, so it did not cause a greater tragedy. Although Yunan herself felt deep remorse afterwards, the psychological trauma would not disappear. If there were still people who dared to violate the taboo in person, she would still choose to shoot without hesitation. That's why she took the guns in the base. The standing gun was replaced by a low-lethal training gun. And just as the awkward lunch came to an end, someone suddenly broke the silence. Sean put down the tin can and asked, "Who is Xiaoan?" Chapter 85. Sean successfully ignited the panic in the whole team with one sentence. Uncle Su reacted the fastest. With a strange cry, he rolled over from his seat and ran away, and rolled out of the restaurant at a speed that was not at all like a 73-year-old, carefully using a small mirror to check the situation inside the restaurant. Although Anping stayed where he was, his muscles were tense, as if the explosives had been ignited and might explode at any time. Zhuang Yuanying looked around, picked up the can and exited the restaurant very consciously, and hid with Su Bo. However, the source of the panic, Yunan, was sitting peacefully on the spot, not at all annoyed by the taboo being mentioned, but looked around with some amusement, and said with a sneer, "Do you think I'm a madman who gets sick at any time?" Anping immediately smiled flatteringly, "Don't dare, I'm just worried about you." Yunan looked at Anping with a half-smile, then suppressed her smile, sighed and said, "Don't worry, I'm not that fragile yet." Outside the restaurant, Uncle Su couldn't help but sneer softly, "This woman doesn't even blink when she tells a lie, and the mess in the back kitchen hasn't been cleaned up until now, so she's ashamed to say that she isn't that fragile?" However, the next moment, Yunan's performance made him stare in surprise. "That's not something you need to be concerned about." "Damn!" Outside the restaurant, Uncle Su cursed inwardly in disbelief, did she take the wrong medicine? As soon as the words fell, Yunan's sharp eyes pierced straight over, refracted against the small mirror, and met Su Bo's eyes. Su Bo suddenly felt the killing intent coming, he quickly shut his mouth, and watched the play with peace of mind. But in any case, Yunan's reaction was indeed too abnormal. The word Xiaoan has always been taboo for many years. No matter how many ways people around her try to enlighten her, the result will only get worse. And Yunan's plainness and honesty at this time are really like the calm before the storm. Xiaoan did not have this sense of crisis. In his feeling, Yunan had already calmed down and could talk frankly, so after hearing Yunan's answer, he continued to ask, "I thought the team members could be more frank." Yunan immediately let out a habitual sneer, "Frank? You are ashamed to be honest. Then, what is the relationship between the survivors in the DUI 9527 manor and you? Why does Boss Li want to help you collect relevant information? Where did you come from? Come on, what's the use of going to the dry galaxy?" With a series of questions, Sean could only answer in silence. It's not that he couldn't say it, but he didn't even know where to start for a while, and the tacit understanding he had reached with Li Yu made it impossible for Sean to choose to be honest. And this moment of silence also made Sean lose the opportunity to continue asking questions. Yunan patted the can with the dining spoon, "Okay, let's eat. After eating, I will teach you rapid fire. Your foundation is good, and with my guidance, you should learn quickly." Uncle Su returned to the dining table cautiously, and reminded Sean, what she meant was that if you don't learn quickly enough, it means that you have a problem with your attitude. Be careful that she is not polite to you. Yunan glanced at Su Bo, but did not deny it. Xiao En didn't care about this at all, he wanted all learning opportunities, not to mention El Yunan's rapid fire really surprised him. How could he have a bad attitude? El Yunan would never have the chance to be rude. El Yunan smiled slightly, you have a good attitude, I hope you can keep it up later. The atmosphere in the restaurant was completely calmed down after El Yunan and Xiao En finished picking the cans and left the restaurant to go to the training ground. Uncle Su let out a long breath, put his hands on his chest and said, I thought civil war was about to start again, and I was ready for rescue, but she actually held back. While scraping the minced meat in the can, Anping said thoughtfully, her attitude is indeed a bit abnormal. She was mentioned to Xiao En in person, but she didn't shoot randomly. It was obvious that even old friends like us didn't dare mentioning. Su Bo hesitated to speak. Anping urged, speak up if you have something to say, there are no outsiders here. Xiao Chuang was a little overwhelmed, and finally gritted his teeth and left the restaurant holding the half-eaten can. So there were really only 2 insiders left in the restaurant. Uncle Su said quietly, Captain, think rationally, can Xiao En be the same as us? Anping said, of course it's different. How long has he joined? And he's full of secrets. No, you're wrong to think so. Uncle Su interrupted, what I mean is, what kind of face is that kid? The 2 together just go from 1 piece of shit to 2 pieces of shit. Damn. Anping could only swear at this naked truth, but he was not reconciled after all. El Yunan never judges people by their appearance. Su Bo said, the question is, that kid not only has good looks, but also has good skills. How many years have we not seen a rookie who can keep up with the rhythm of the whole team in his first mission? Besides, his performance is not only as long as he can keep up with the rhythm, it is no problem to judge him as an MVP in the last mission. This kind of young meat with both talent and appearance has always been called the master killer. Anping's face suddenly turned ugly, what do you mean? Su Bo said, I mean, the vice captain is probably the same as you, thinking of Xiao En. That kid didn't think much of it when he first came, but now he looks more and more like Xiao En. Anping was stunned for a moment, then said, the 2 of them don't look alike at all. Xiao En is taller than El Yunan, and Xiao En is at best of medium stature. Su Bo said, they are not similar in form but similar in spirit, the same omnipotence, the same straightforwardness. In the past, only Xiao En would speak out about the vice-captain's various evil deeds, so when Xiao En said that the vice-captain's cooking was delicious, she only then will she be convinced, even unquestionable. And now, there is another person who dares to speak ill of her in front of her, how can people not think of Xiao En? Anping was silent for a long time, then nodded and said, it would be great if Xiao En can really fill in Xiao An's vacancy. It's not just good, it's so good, I really don't want to be shot by the vice-captain again. That woman has been crazy for 10 years, and it's time to stop. But Captain, there is something I have to remind you, no matter how much Shan looks like Xiao En, he is not Xiao En after all. Anping was puzzled, are you talking nonsense? What I mean is, no matter how good Xiao En is, he is the vice-captain's younger brother. The 2 of them only have a sister-in-law relationship. But Xiao En has no blood relationship with the vice-captain. In addition, he is young and has good features. The so-called teacher killer is not a joke. Anping's face suddenly darkened, and he was silent for a long time before he said reluctantly, it's a bunch of nonsense, how could El Yunan? Uncle Su took a look at Anping's hideous face of forcibly refusing to admit the reality, and decided to fully perform his duty as a doctor, say what patients don't like to hear. Captain, if you don't believe me, let's go to the training ground to have a look. Chapter 86. When Su Bo took the patient to the shooting range, he saw a scene as expected. El Yunan hugged Shan from behind, clasped Shan's wrist tightly with both hands, and corrected his movements. No, the posture is too rigid. I told you not to copy my movements. We have different body proportions and habits of exerting force. You need to find the posture that suits you and the gun best. Shan tried to change his focus, is this so? It's still not right, you are still imitating my way of exerting force, try to relax a little more, and follow your own feelings. El Yunan patted Xiao En's waist and legs while talking, and then expressed a little surprised laughter, as expected of a young man, the muscle elasticity is pretty good. Seeing this situation, Uncle Su said dryly, Captain, get out now and pretend that you didn't see anything, there is still time. Anping just poked, then poked Su Bo's eyes with his middle finger. And the actions of these two people naturally couldn't escape Yunan's gaze. She put Xiaoan down, motioned for the latter to go to free training first, then came to the two of them, and asked mockingly, "Is the captain here to inspect the work?" Su Bo said, "Check out the marriage and love issues of the Red Apricot Squad." Yunan didn't say a word, her right hand hung down to her waist, as if she was about to display her rapid-fire skills. After all, Uncle Su is an old teammate for many years, and he immediately jumped behind Anping at an alarming speed. "Captain, the vice-captain is so annoyed by what I said about the central matter." Anping wanted to smash this bitch's head with his fist, but seeing that Yunan had turned his sharp eyes over, he could only bite the bullet and say, "Don't listen to Su Bo's nonsense, I just came to see your training situation. How is Shan doing?" Yunan sneered, and responded, "That kid has very solid basic skills, good talent, and is improving very fast. I think he will be able to master rapid fire before dinner today." Anping was taken aback, raised his eyebrows, "So fast?" Yunan sneered at this surprise, "With the guidance of a famous teacher like me, if you can't master the basic skills before dinner, you can only say that you are too stupid as an apprentice." So Anping and Su Bo, these two stupid apprentices who were also taught by Yunan, but failed to master the primary skills after a week, suddenly felt as if they were punched directly in the face by someone, and left in disgrace. In the training room, after sending away two boring teammates, Yunan put away his gun and turned his gaze back to Xiaoan. Seeing the young man's more proficient and smooth movements, the woman couldn't help but feel more playful, thinking to herself, "The basic conditions are really good, and the progress is incredible. But the conditions are too good, but it will expose your origin. In the entire galaxy, there are not many places where a person's basic skills can be shaped so solidly. The better you perform, the more secrets you have on your body, the harder it is to hide." The little guy is still a little tender. While thinking about it, Yunan couldn't help laughing at himself. "But what does your secret have to do with me?" Yunan's laughter caught Shan's attention. "What's wrong?" Yunan restrained his smile, reached out and knocked on the wall beside him and made a crisp sound, "You have enough energy to distract yourself, why do you care what I'm laughing at? Your marksmanship has been practiced to perfection." Faced with such unreasonable doubts, Shan had no choice but to keep his mouth shut, and honestly turned his attention back to the gun in his hand. After all, what was Yunan laughing at, and what did it have to do with him? Design training took up Shan's entire afternoon. When he came to the cafeteria with sore arms and had dinner with his teammates, he only felt a burst of heartfelt satisfaction, and the haze that had accumulated in his heart was swept away. This afternoon's harvest was extremely rich. Yunan's rapid-fire skills are not so profound and subtle, but they are solid enough: how to choose and modify suitable firearms, how to choose reasonable shooting targets at close range, how to let your hands burst out immediately the fastest speed, how to control the muzzle to point to the correct position. These steps were summed up step by Yunan after hundreds of battles. Each step is not amazing, but after several steps are superimposed, Yunan's amazing rapid-fire stunt is created. In addition, Yunan is very good at teaching people. Unlike her usual rough-and-tumble character, when teaching people to learn art, Yunan's meticulousness is surprising. She could very accurately find every detail of Xiaoan's omissions, and tell him the correct way to correct it, so that in one afternoon, Shan felt that he had peeped through the door, barely entering the room. Next, as long as he increases the amount of training, he will be able to imitate Yunan's rapid-fire stunt in a few days. Such a harvest naturally satisfied the Jedi apprentice who was keen on learning, and also made him feel a little bit of comfort in this uncertain situation. And next, there is happiness. "Shan," Uncle Su said at the dinner table, "if you have time at night, can you make some emergency ointment for me?" As soon as the words fell, Zhuang Yuanying at the end of the table made a slight sound of surprise. "It's so late, do you still have to work overtime?" While the girl was talking, she lowered her head slightly, and slightly pulled down the hat to cover her face with her hands, but through the shadow cast by the brim of the hat, Zhuang Yuanying's eyes still stayed on Xiaoan. This newcomer to the team, who has just experienced a full day practice, is in a state of exhaustion at this time. Although Xiaoan is in a good mood, his physical fitness has indeed reached its limit. His fingers were trembling, and his tired face was hard to hide. In this state, Uncle Su actually asked him to work overtime. Isn't this 73-year-old genius doctor too unethical? Su Bo sighed when he heard the words. Sure enough, the world is based on faces, and Xiao Zhuang can win Xiao Zhuang's care by showing Xiao En a little tiredness. Back then, he was an old team doctor who took banned drugs and burst into tears at the dining table. Xiao Zhuang just kept silent. Take up your job and sit a little farther away, the difference in treatment is so obvious. But there was no need to discuss overtime work at night. Uncle Su knocked on the dining table and said, "Don't worry, Xiao Zhuang, Xiao En is so handsome, he will definitely not be afraid of getting tired." This sentence obviously has no logic at all. What does being handsome have to do with being tired? But Zhuang Yuanying blushed immediately after hearing this, and didn't dare to say anything more. Not long after, Uncle Su saw that Shan had finished eating the canned meat, and he didn't care about letting him digest properly, so he dragged Shan to his pharmacy to prepare first aid ointment. Lu Nan, who stayed in the restaurant to enjoy the dessert, let out a habitual sneer, "Don't bother, Xiao Zhuang, the tin can will be pierced by you." At the end of the dining table, Zhuang Yuanying suddenly realized that she had already finished eating the canned food, and at this time she was actually abusing the canned food with the dining spoon. After being exposed by Lu Nan, she was immediately ashamed. Lu Nan didn't intend to tease the other party's concern for Xiao En, but explained, "You are the only one in the team who doesn't know about this matter. When I wanted to inform you, you stayed behind closed doors in the workshop. It's easy to say, well, Boss Li has ordered us to keep Xiao En in the base no matter what during this period of time, and not to let him go out." Chapter 87. Zhuang Yuanying raised her head when she heard the words, showing a surprised look. "Boss Li? Why?" Lu Nan said, "Who knows, I didn't ask." Anping said, "I didn't ask, but I can probably guess it. Recently, Boss Li has been collecting information about the survivors of the DUI 9527 manor. Most likely there are no good results, and he doesn't want Shan to know." Zhuang Yuanying didn't speak, just looked at the captain with curious eyes. Anping then continued to explain, "You should also know that Xiao En is not a local. He boarded Boss Li's thief ship during the raid in DUI 9527. At that time, there were still many people in the manor who did not escape. Come out, so far there is no follow-up, I guess there are relatives and friends of Shan in it." Lu Nan also asked, "Girlfriend?" Anping shrugged, "Who knows? We weren't there at the time, but we were probably close people of the same level. Otherwise, why would Xiao En stay in the Silver Knights? Is it because he owes Boss Li $1 million? It is clear that he wants to use Bian's intelligence network to save people. After all, Boss Li is one of the parties involved in the raid, and we are the closest in terms of relationship." Lu Nan asked curiously, "But I've never heard him mention it before." "It's just that I didn't mention it to us. There must have been a tacit understanding between Boss Li and Boss Li. It's rare for Boss Li to care so much for a member. He has so many things to do now, but he puts most of his affairs aside. It's not uncommon to run intelligence for that kid and ask us to hold him in the base." Lu Nan was silent for a while, then sneered and said, "It's really interesting when you put it this way. Boss Li has never cared so much for anyone over the years." Before the words fell, there was a burst of giggling from outside the restaurant, "So it's different to say that being handsome is different. Boss Li has been single for so many years, and he is surrounded by beautiful women but he is unmoved. It seems that the truth has already been revealed to us." "Found it?" Su Bo walked into the restaurant while talking, and then saw the training gun in Lu Nan's hand, aimed at him. "I rely on me to just say it casually. It's not a taboo in our team to insult Boss Li? You don't have to be so serious." Lu Nan put away his gun and asked, "What about the task that was given to you, why did you come back alone?" Uncle Su said, "Teach him the prescription personally, and arrange tasks for that kid. I have nothing to do with the rest. 200 barrels of ointment are enough for him to dispense until tomorrow night, so I won't stay with him overnight." Zhuang Yuanying said with concern, "Will you be exhausted?" Su Bo smiled and said, "It's better to be exhausted. Throw it into the medical cabin and sleep directly for 3 days and 3 nights, and we will save trouble. It is really tiring to work with that kid. A simple extraction step, he can give you come up with 10 questions and 20 rationalizations." As soon as this remark came out, Anping also sighed. He obviously felt the same way. He was exhausted physically and mentally after a whole morning of special training with Shan. The problem, the psychological trauma to him is even more serious. This entire afternoon, Anping was actually thinking about how to ask for leave the next day. If Uncle Su could really leave Shan in the medical cabin to sleep for 3 days and 3 nights, Anping would definitely raise a glass to celebrate. However, Anping's cup was not raised after all. Early the next morning, while enjoying the exquisite breakfast cooked by Zhuang Yuanying in the restaurant, Anping struggled with the sore muscles all over his body. Uncle stopped, and when he had a good rest for the day, he heard a familiar and terrifying footsteps outside the restaurant. The next moment, I saw Shan walking in with an excited expression on his face. Uncle Su, who was sitting across from Anping, was also in a daze. The soup dumpling in his hand fell on the table, and he cursed, "What the hell are you doing here?" Shan didn't care about this faux pas, and asked enthusiastically, "The first step has been done, what shall we do next?" "The first step has already been done, 200 barrels of ointment, you have already done it." "Impossible, even if you rush to work all night, it is too late." Shan said, "It's really too late to make it purely by hand, but I consider that the preparation of the ointment is purely manual work, and there is no need for pure handwork, so I used the equipment and parts from the equipment library next door to modify a temporary production line. Simple feeding and timing stirring, cooling extraction and other functions can be easily realized." Before he finished speaking, Uncle Su jumped up. "Temporary production line? Are you kidding me?" While speaking, Uncle Su had already rushed out of the dining room inconceivably, and ran quickly to the equipment warehouse next to the pharmacy, and not long after, he let out a scream that shook most of the underground base. "Fuck, are you serious?" Shan stayed in the dining room, eagerly looking at Anping. The clear eyes made Anping feel creepy. "Captain, is it time for the second lesson this morning?" Anping cursed in his heart, "If you continue to learn like this, the third class will be my funeral." But in front of the team members, how could Anping, as the captain, back down, so he forced a smile and said, "Okay, with this it's right to be motivated, let's learn about the moral cultivation of warriors this morning." "Morality?" Anping Yu said earnestly, "The martial arts of the Qian-Xing system emphasizes both internal and external training. Simply improving martial power is just a demon heretic. You must strengthen your own moral cultivation in order to be mellow and happy." These words made El Yunnan laugh constantly. I don't know which novel Anping read this nonsense from. He also cultivates both internally and externally, and is mellow and satisfactory. If moral cultivation is really so useful, the pirate gangs in the dry galaxy should all go crazy and die suddenly by themselves. It is obvious that the physical fitness cannot sustain the continuous actual combat teaching, so you can tell the truth, why use such outrageous excuses to cover yourself up? When everyone can't see it. Although Xiaoan is young and a little green, he is obviously not an idiot. How could he believe your nonsense? However, after Anping finished his nonsense, Xiaoan nodded vigorously, showing deep sympathy. Others may not take this theory of both internal and external training seriously, but as a Jedi apprentice, Shan has received similar education since he was a child, and the corresponding philosophy has long been ingrained. The Jedi Knights hold the most powerful force in the galaxy, but they are not born for force, but are pursuing the balance of the force all their lives. Compared with the term samurai, they are actually more like a group of devout seekers. Therefore, Anping's nonsense so-called theory of both internal and external cultivation, on the contrary, met Xiaoan's wishes and made him feel a deep sense of identity. Well, force without moral restraint will only be counterproductive. This idea is very precious. I hope the captain will explain your understanding to me carefully. Damn! El Yunan's sneer immediately froze on his face, and hearing Xiaoan asking for details about the so-called moral cultivation, El Yunnan couldn't help feeling absurdly betrayed in his heart. Shan, I was so wrong about you. Chapter 88. Anping's theory of internal and external cultivation, of course, has elements of nonsense, but when Xiaoan pulled him to ask for advice with full expectations, Anping was able to speak out profound truths one after another. In fact, this sleepy-eyed middle-aged man has experienced ups and downs in his life, and his understanding and experience of force and morality are far superior to ordinary people. He has seen not only a madman who is self-destructive due to overinflation, but also a gangster who has done a lot of crimes but got away with it. Even he himself has experienced confusion about force and morality when he was young. He still had a sense of etiquette and morality. When you are in awe, there are continuous disasters and sinking step by step. But when he came to Li Yu's subordinates and started a half-black and half-white business, when he no longer feared the worldly etiquette, he lived a happy life instead. Anping didn't instill any conclusive concepts for Shan, but just told stories about what he had heard, seen, and thought, so that Sean could listen with all his attention and nothing else. After the story meeting, Sean fell into deep thought alone, and stopped pestering Anping for actual combat discussions. This relieved the middle-aged man whose muscles were still sore. The whole morning slipped away quietly, and after lunchtime, it was El Yunan's turn to teach. After lunch, Xiao En showed El Yunan an eager look. Vice Captain, regarding yesterday's rapid-fire technique, I had some thoughts when I was assembling the ointment production line at night, please correct me. While speaking, Xiao En pulled out his training gun and pierced through the holographic targets around him continuously with lightning speed. El Yunan's complexion was tense, looking at the part of the holographic target that was pierced by the energy beam and marked with discoloration, and remained silent for a while. Xiao En felt a little uneasy in his heart. He did not completely follow El Yunan's teaching yesterday, but added a lot of his own innovations. The modification of the training gun, and the anticipation skills when aiming, etc. So that the rapid-fire results were not perfect. He fired 4 consecutive shots within 1 second, but only one shot accurately hit the vital point of the holographic target. The remaining 3 shots were more or less offset, and the most outrageous of them the shot almost missed the target. But in El Yunan's eyes, this result has a completely different meaning. From a professional point of view, in just one day, Sean's progress was simply earth-shaking. Although only judging from the results of the holographic target, the shooting accuracy seems to be not as good as yesterday. But aside from the results, Xiao En's smooth and easy gestures are far more decent than yesterday's jerky imitation of others, as if he has entered the room. Next, as long as you practice hard, your shooting speed and accuracy will naturally continue to improve. This is just a matter of accumulation. To be honest, El Yunan has nothing to correct. It is of course the luck of being a teacher to meet an apprentice with such amazing understanding, but on the other hand, it is also the pressure of being a teacher. Especially when Xiao En looked up at El Yunan expectantly, waiting for her further correction, El Yunan felt tongue-tied and didn't know what to say to him. The deputy captain, who was used to ridicule and sarcasm, almost forgot how to affirm others in terms of professional skills. After a long time, El Yunan coughed and said, "It's so, it's not impossible to practice in this direction." Sean breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that this already represented El Yunan's extremely high evaluation, and then he said with great interest, "Then let's go to actual combat." El Yunan almost choked on his saliva. Actual combat. Sean said, "There is nothing that can help people improve more than actual combat training, Vice Captain, please." When the young Jedi apprentice bowed his head to El Yunan with a sincere attitude, the rebellious deputy captain couldn't even think of refusing for a moment. And the benevolence of this thought finally made El Yunan regret it. That night, Zhuang Yuanying carefully prepared dinner, set the dining table full, and waited for the arrival of several teammates. However, Anping and Su Bo arrived, but El Yunan, who was most accustomed to eating on time, did not arrive. This is undoubtedly a rare thing in the Hongxing team. El Yunan is far more persistent than others when it comes to eating, and it can even be called a heart disease. It is usually earth-shattering events that make her miss meals. The girl was a little uneasy. "Captain, nothing happened recently, right?" Anping sighed and said, "When will there be no accidents in the wilderness? If you want to ask about El Yunan's situation, you can ask directly. But about El Yunan, I can only say that you'd better start preparing lessons tonight. Tomorrow from now on, you will take El Yunan's class." Zhuang Yuanying was inexplicable. "What's wrong with the vice captain?" Anping couldn't help but twitched the corner of his mouth, jokingly said, "What happened to me, what happened to her?" Before the words fell, there was a sound of tired hobbled footsteps outside the restaurant. The tall El Yunan came to the restaurant with rare heavy steps, raised his eyebrows, and greeted his teammates tentatively. But when she sat down at the dining table, picked up the soup spoon, and was about to take a sip of hot soup to moisten her throat, she found that the soup spoon in her hand was shaking non-stop, and a spoonful of clear soup would be thrown onto the table immediately. The next moment, El Yunan looked up, and saw that Anping and Su Bo had turned their heads very consciously beside the dining table. One was pretending to be watching the holographic TV in the restaurant, and the other was holding a holographic book upside down, shaking his head. This kind of concealed gesture almost made El Yunan angry from the bottom of her heart, but unfortunately she was extremely exhausted, so she couldn't get up anyway, so she just put down the spoon and stared at the two with murderous eyes. Anping was the first to bear the pressure, and coughed, "I'm full, so I'm going to pay my respects." Su Bo was tongue-tied, hating himself for hesitating for a moment, and the reason he had thought up was plagiarized by the captain. He really didn't have the guts to say in front of the vice-captain that I would also go out, so he had to rack his brains to think of another reason. I'm going to heal Sean. After finishing speaking, Uncle Sue himself admired his aura, because this reason can be described as upright and logical. Liu Nan spent the whole afternoon competing with Xiao En in actual combat, but at dinner time, the vice-captain who was like an Iron Man was so exhausted that he delayed the meal. It is conceivable that Xiao En, who is the opponent of the competition, will be in a bad situation. Even more unbearable. At this time, he might be lying on the training ground dying. At this time, if the team doctor doesn't take action, it's simply unreasonable. So, Su Bo quietly slipped out of the restaurant with his back to Liu Nan's murderous eyes. And when he came to Liu Nan's shooting training ground, it was no surprise that he saw Xiao En, who was covered in bruises and limp on the ground, and smelled a faint smell of barbecue in the air. The team doctor couldn't help but said immediately, "Are you a natural masochist? I usually want to go around when I see the deputy captain, but you dare to go up to her to fight. You got burns all over your body with a training gun. You are simply more dedicated than a holographic target." While talking, Su Bo began to put back the ointment on Xiao En's body. For this kind of vile patient who likes to add to the doctor's workload, Uncle Su's actions are naturally not gentle, and the medicine stickers are clattering, but Xiao En can't help laughing. Seeing this smile, Uncle Su was horrified. He felt that he was the most perverted person among the patients he had been in contact with in his life. He could still laugh out loud after being slapped hard on the burnt part. "But I heard Sean say softly, 'I won.'" "Hey!" Su Bo was taken aback when he heard this, and slapped a piece of medicine patch on the ground. After Xiao En finished speaking, he closed his eyes. "Although we only won a small round at the end, we won in the end. That's really congratulations." Uncle Su applied a piece of ointment heavily on Sean's wound. The smoke dissipated. After a while, Sean finally stopped smirking, but lay on the ground and asked a question that made Uncle Su's hands tremble again. "Uncle Su, do you have something to hide from me?" Uncle Su's scalp tingled slightly when he heard this, and he felt embarrassed as if he committed a crime and was caught in bed. Of course they had something to hide from him. Boss Li personally ordered all members of the team to tie up Xiao En and not let him leave the base these days. Naturally, the reason behind this cannot be told to Xiao En himself. Uncle Su did not expect the kid actually saw it. Thinking about it again, Uncle Su couldn't help sighing in his heart, "It's strange if you can't see it." Xiao En, although many places are pedantic and kind-hearted, but he has never been stupid. In the previous action on DUI 4399, Xiao En did not agree with the team's ruthless behavior. The disgust in his heart was even palpable. However, Sean was not so stupid as to argue with the players on the spot, or make a scene, but did his best to implement his philosophy with a plan that everyone could accept. The dead cannot be brought back to life, but Xiao En can find a way to persuade others to return to the deserted area with a boat of people who should have undoubtedly died. This kind of thing, without Xiao En present, the members of the team would never do it anyway. Therefore, it would be foolish for anyone to underestimate Sean's mind. So Uncle Su also gave up weaving lies, and just sighed, "If we can tell, why would we bother to hide it from you?" Xiao En was taken aback when he heard the words, and couldn't help laughing. "That's right, then I won't ask. But I have always had a problem with it, that is, I can't suppress my curiosity." Su Bo snorted when he heard the words, "You mean to threaten us? If you don't obediently teach us all your unique skills in the past few days, you will run out desperately to satisfy your curiosity, right?" While speaking, Uncle Su applied a piece of medical patch to Xiao En's wound with force, causing the latter's smile to freeze slightly. After a while, Xiao En endured the pain and asked, "Uncle Su, this wound of mine has already been pasted." Uncle Su held up another piece of ointment. "Do you want me to apply it again?" After finishing speaking, Uncle Su laughed and said, "You boy, you have become more oily than when we first met, but it's better to be oilier. The dry galaxy is not a place where a gentleman can live in a dignified manner. All right, tonight, based on your physical condition you probably can't do much, just study medicine with me, hehe, if you want to be a good doctor in the Red Apricot Squad, relying on mainstream medical skills alone won't work." Sean asked with great interest, "I also noticed that there seems to be a serious shortage of conventional medical supplies in the team, so it is necessary to replace them with various local herbs. Is there any reason for this?" Uncle Su replied, the blockade of materials is the biggest reason. We are not a formal organization after all. We can't build so many factories in this desolate land. Many materials can only be imported by trade. But I want to know, not all merchants are willing to deal with us, let alone all commodities can be circulated happily. Shan listened intently, are medical supplies a special taboo? I don't think the Silver Knights are short of other supplies. Lack, everything is missing, how can there be any supplies that are not lacking? From food to energy, from mechanical parts to electronic equipment, the Silver Knights are short of everything. Su Bo sighed, it's just that Boss Li has great powers, it is hard to fill most of the holes, which makes the organization thriving and rich in supplies. But Boss Li is not omnipotent after all, some holes cannot be filled, and medical resources are one of them. If in the Hongxing team besides, you want to use Bacta ointment as tattoo stickers so extravagantly, it's a dream. Shan was also shocked when he heard it, since resources are precious, don't waste them on me. Su Bo said, it's okay, these are all recycled and reused, and they don't have much effect at all. Even Shan couldn't help but want to swear, can Bacta ointment be recycled and reused? Where does this come from? If there is no record in the medical books later, this matter will never end. Uncle Su will be waiting to eat the bento made by El Yunan in the next few days. Chapter 89. Shan's second day in the underground base was fulfilling and enjoyable. Although he fought with Enping in the morning, his bones were broken, and in the afternoon he had burns all over his body due to a gunfight with El Yunan, and he was learning about herbal medicine at night. When he was accidentally poisoned, he vomited and had diarrhea all night. But for Xiaoen, the little physical sufferings he experienced were of no value at all, and the knowledge and skills he learned were invaluable. Anping's fighting skills, El Yunan's marksmanship, Su Bo's knowledge of herbs and first aid skills all opened his eyes. These things may not be more brilliant than what he saw and learned in the temple, but it embodies the countless painstaking efforts and ingenuity of the team members. For Xiaoen, it was enough to expand his horizons and improve his strength in all aspects. In the current situation, there is nothing more important than personal strength. Shan thought more than once that if he had been stronger and helped master a little more when the manor was attacked, the subsequent development would be better. Wouldn't it be different? Do those innocent people who died tragically have a chance to survive? Of course, Shan is not yet immersed in unnecessary regrets, but the previous encounters did make him feel deeply about his own shortcomings. So on the morning of the third day, Shan got up early in the morning, endured the severe pain all over his body, and went to the restaurant to prepare breakfast for several teammates. According to the roster, he should not be responsible for the 3 meals today, but Shan did willing to put on a courteous gesture in exchange for the unreserved preaching and teaching of several temporary instructors. Shan made breakfast very carefully. Although the cold ingredients in the kitchen were limited, and there were quite a few dry Galaxy agricultural products that he was not familiar with, Shan relied on his enthusiasm and outstanding craftsmanship to serve his teammates. A table full of delicacies. And wearing a neat white clothes waiting in front of the restaurant. However, when it was time to eat, the teammates who were supposed to come one after another did not arrive. Even El Yunan, who was always on time, disappeared. In the end, only Zhuang Yuanying appeared timidly at the door of the restaurant, but hesitated. Zhuang Yuanying tried her best to ignore Xiaoen who was welcoming guests at the door, and looked at the empty restaurant with her head. After hesitating for a while, she finally pulled off her soft hat and turned to leave. Shan worked hard all morning, just waiting for such a diner, of course he couldn't let her go, he hurried up and grabbed her hand, "Why did you run away?" The girl's face was blushing, and the temperature from her hand was gradually increasing, but her voice was still weak, I still have work to do. Xiaoen hurriedly persuaded, the big work can't hinder 3 meals a day. I specially made your favorite night lamp grass soup with rice today. After eating, it's not too late to get busy with work. Zhuang Yuanying felt even more shy when she heard such caring and sincere words, and couldn't help speeding up her pace to escape from the scene. Her food preference was originally intended to be a secret that no one knew, but Xiaoen's insight was too amazing. In just a few days, I can see her preferences, and I know her better than my teammates who have known her for many years. But Shan held on tightly, and even though the girl shook her hand vigorously, she couldn't get rid of the Jedi apprentice who strengthened her body with the force of force. Finally, she was discouraged and said softly, then. Only then did Xiaoen heave a sigh of relief, and let go of the hand that had been thrown numb by Zhuang Yuanying for a long time. And looking back, seeing myself being dragged all the way by Zhuang Yuanying, leaving 2 rows of traces on the ground where the solace of the shoes rubbed against the floor, I had a new understanding of the brute force of this young mechanic in my heart. This kind of strength is like a large-scale engineering robot, which completely violates the basic common sense of the human body, and Zhuang Yuanying's inhuman identity is further confirmed. What kind of creature is this girl who looks like a human, talks like a human, and even has the same eating habits as a human, but possesses inhuman strength? After the somewhat embarrassing breakfast time, Shan still couldn't wait for Enping and the others, and he couldn't help being disappointed. But at this moment, the timid and shy girl said softly, "Well, I am the person in charge of teaching this morning." Shan was taken aback. "You?" Zhuang Yuanying was also taken aback, her whole body shrank into a ball. "Yes, I'm sorry." Shan felt dumbfounded about this subconscious apology, and at the same time secretly told himself that he must be cautious in his words and deeds when facing Zhuang Yuanying in the future, otherwise it would be too easy to disturb this little animal. But in any case, Zhuang Yuanying's willingness to serve as a temporary instructor is undoubtedly a surprise to Xiao En. Among the 4 teammates of the Hongxing team, Zhuang Yuanying's skills are the most eye-catching. In other words, what Shan needs most now is Zhuang Yuanying's craftsmanship. Because what he is going to do next requires absolutely superb machine repair skills and rich enough experience in machine repair, and all of these can only fall on Zhuang Yuanying right now. Shan was still thinking about how to make that overly shy teammate willing to share his knowledge, but now the knowledge is delivered to his door. After trying to appease Zhuang Yuanying, Xiao En followed her to the deepest part of the ground in Hongxing base. As far as the eye can see, it is a huge open square, with a thick circular metal gate installed on the ground in the center. With the arrival of Zhuang Yuanying, the gate slowly closed around, revealing a long passage that stretches downwards and ends without end. And a fully armed lifting platform. Shan couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the elevating platform with teeth and claws. He traveled the galaxy with his master, and he was barely well informed, but it was the first time he saw someone pile up so many weapons on his own elevating platform. Equipped. On the lifting platform that can accommodate up to 20 people, 2 automatic turrets, a fire-breathing tower and a missile-launching tower are installed, not to mention directly occupying more than half of the space, and the lifting platform is close to being overweight, and it keeps making harsh groans when it moves up and down. Xiao En followed Zhuang Yuanying on the platform and descended deep underground amidst the rumbling sound, and his heart trembled with the trembling of the platform. Seeing the incomparably deep passage under his feet, Xiao En couldn't help thinking about the picture of the lifting platform disintegrating in the air and the 2 falling into the abyss. However, when he glanced at Zhuang Yuanying from the corner of the eye, Shan was surprised to find that the other party was leaning against the fire tower, subconsciously stroking the dark fire vent with his palm. Those automatic weapons gave her a great sense of security. If Xiao En realized something, he couldn't help thinking that Zhuang Yuanying always hid in the spaceship and refused to go out when performing the mission. The explanation given by Enping and others was that someone must stay behind when performing the mission, but the actual situation, I'm afraid it was Zhuang Yuanying who had a serious fear of the outside world. Generally speaking, this kind of psychological problem stems from some bleak and dark past. Thinking of this, Xiao En couldn't help but make up his mind, in the future when getting along with Zhuang Yuanying, he must be careful not to touch each other's scars. This time is to ask Zhuang Yuanying's machine repair skills, so just discuss the facts, don't talk about other topics lightly. After a while, the lifting platform finally carried the 2 of them down to the end of the passage, which was also the lowest floor of the underground base. With the opening of an airtight gate, a bit of biting cold wind blows towards his face, making Shan shiver involuntarily. Is it so spooky? What is hidden in this underground base? Chapter 90. After crossing the gate, Shan heard a loud clanging sound, as if heavy metal parts were colliding violently. Add to this the sounds of gears turning, engines humming, flames burning, and so on, like a loud band. Judging from the sound, there is an entire factory hidden at the bottom of the base, and the owner of the factory is undoubtedly Zhuang Yuanying. The deeper Xiao En went, the more surprised he was by the girl with horns. He has been in the Hongxing base for a while, so he has checked the 3-dimensional map of the base, but the map only shows the part above the long passage. As for the part below, it is classified as top secret, even with Shan's authority. Less than. Now it seems that the weight of this top secret is really not light, not only about this base, but also about the deep secrets of the Red Apricot Squad and even the Silver Knights. But now is not the time to explore the secrets. There are countless secrets in the Milky Way. If we explore them one by one, it will not be enough to give Sean another 800 years. So there is only one thing he has to do right now. Today, let me demonstrate the maintenance method of Tianxing 3 engine. Zhuang Yuanying brought Xiao En to a clean and flawless processing workshop, and said to a spaceship engine placed in the middle. Tianxing 3 is a general-purpose engine designed by Baihe Industries 700 years ago. It can be easily assembled into various spaceships. Although there are of course flaws in the design, it is cheap and has a strong production capacity. And the performance is sufficient. Therefore, in the following 700 years, even after several versions, Tianxing 3 has always been the most common spacecraft engine in the dry galaxy. Sean nodded vigorously. He has gradually mastered these common senses through various channels during this period of time. But the same knowledge is naturally more credible when spoken by Zhuang Yuanying, a senior mechanic. Among the various spaceships of the Silver Knights, more than half of them are loaded with Tianxing 3 with similar styles, so mastering this type of engine is also a compulsory course for every mechanic in the Silver Knights. Zhuang Yuanying walked up to the processing table in the workshop while talking, controlled several mechanical arms, and began to disassemble the engine that was as tall as a person in front of him. The one that was sent to the workshop was obviously used rough and not maintained properly. At this time, the whole body was scorched black, as if it had been scorched by a raging fire, and black smoke continued to emit from the cracked gaps. Half of the turbine blades are broken and bent. But after taking it apart, the interior is simply horrible. From Xiao En's point of view, this thing has no salvage value at all. Instead of bothering to repair it, it is better to contact the manufacturer directly to replace it with a new one. Anyway, this Tianxing 3 is the most popular civilian style in the dry galaxy. Not to mention the low price, the acquisition channels are also very wide. But looking at Zhuang Yuanying's focused and pious expression, Xiao En knew that for this young mechanic, the problem of machine repair was never a matter of financial calculations. Even if it wasn't for demonstrating the technology, she would not let an engine that was still worth repairing be scrapped. With the dancing of the mechanical arm, this Tianxing number 3 was disassembled into countless small components. Zhuang Yuanying softly explained the structural principle of the engine, and at the same time classified the disassembled components. Among them, the completely irreparable waste products were classified into one category, those that can continue to be used after processing are classified into one category, and those that are intact are the last category. And in the girl's soft voice, the pile of components symbolizing waste products is getting higher and higher, which makes Xiao En feel very puzzled. Zhuang Yuanying discarded at least 1/3 of the components, and then how is she going to fix it? Even if there are enough components in the underground base to replace all the waste products, but the whole engine is disassembled like this, and then reinstalled will inevitably affect the overall performance. The next step is the core of today's lesson. For severely damaged engines, repairs cannot be carried out according to the conventional thinking. Zhuang Yuanying said, stopping the work in hand for a while, and began to seriously prepare the explanation, but his eyes were still focused on the workbench, and he didn't even look at Sean. Xiao En did not take it seriously. With Zhuang Yuanying's shy personality, I am afraid that this is the only way for her to speak fluently. And compared to Zhuang Yuanying's concern, he cared more about how the other party planned to repair the engine that had been dismantled into scrap. The versatility of Tianxing 3 has always been well known, and this versatility does not only mean that it can be smoothly installed into the interior of many different types of spacecraft, but more importantly, Tianxing 3 is the best choice for many similar engines. Prototype. Therefore, under certain conditions, Tianxing 3 can be converted into other types of engines. Xiao En couldn't help being dumbfounded when he heard this. Is this a joke? The engine is not an assembly toy. Both manufacturing and maintenance require an absolutely precise environment. Can it be transformed temporarily? However, as Zhuang Yuanying's processing steps continued to advance, Xiao En was even more surprised to find that the dilapidated Tianxing number 3 was actually changing into a brand new shape little by little. The original slightly complicated turbine blades were cut and removed as a whole, and replaced with a set of grids made of special steel plates processed from the shell. The core reaction chamber was closed by 1/3, although the engine efficiency was reduced, but it was also the engine can maintain normal operation. The scorched and cracked shell is simply welded and filled, and then put back. It looks a little shaky, but considering that the overall performance of the engine has declined, it is not necessary for the shell to provide such a strong fixing and heat dissipation function. After a series of operations, Tianxing 3 has changed beyond recognition, but it seems to be glowing with a new vitality. After all, Sean has accumulated considerable knowledge. After observing for a while, he confirmed that this engine carefully repaired by Zhuang Yuanying was castrated and modified with reference to the lowest configuration of the Sky Series Sky Field, and it can run normally in theory. Although as a low-end model, the performance of Tianxing Wilderness is castrated by almost half compared to the original version, but there is still performance to speak of. Before undergoing repairs, Tianxing No. 3 is simply a waste product waiting to be scrapped. So far, Sean is only amazed. Zhuang Yuanying's skills are not shocking, they are even deliberately restrained. She didn't use her own strange strength and unique machine repair gun throughout the whole process. All operations used the most simple and unpretentious technology, and even her movements were slowed down. It seems to be saying, as long as you memorize this process, anyone can do the same thing. Sean can, of course. Chapter 91. As an absolutely dedicated and excellent student, Sean has memorized most of the key steps just by watching the process. Although some structural principles are still unclear, but only from the practical level, even if you start working directly now, there will be no problem. After completing the modification, Zhuang Yuanying exhaled lightly, looking at the brand new Skyfield engine in front of him, his heart was filled with sincere joy. For her, there is nothing happier than working as a mechanic. But even so, Zhuang Yuanying still didn't dare to turn her head and look directly at Xiao En. For this newcomer who just joined the team, Zhuang Yuanying still couldn't treat Anping and others calmly, and it was inevitable to be flustered after a long time of contact. So after she calmed down, she immediately advanced the course to the next link. Next, let me demonstrate a modification method of Tianxing 3. While speaking, Zhuang Yuanying manipulated the conveyor belt on the processing table, transported the modified Sky Field to the warehouse, and then called out another intact Sky 3 and put it on the processing table. Tianxing 3A is the most versatile engine. It has a very broad space for modification. Both the official and the private sector have created countless wonderful modification plans. At this time, what Zhuang Yuanying wanted to demonstrate was naturally not a simple method. Sean watched the girl's performance with full anticipation. Zhuang Yuanying did not disappoint Xiao En. She used the limited tools on the processing table to make an ordinary engine look like a new one with a few simple steps, lighting up an unusual light. However, looking at the steel machine in front of him that was covered in patches, blazing wildly, and making harsh and sharp noises from time to time, Sean only felt that he was facing an explosive barrel that had been ignited, and his heart couldn't help but follow the energy of the dynamite. Runaway and bouncing engine ups and downs. The underground factory is built so deep, is it possible to prevent the big explosion from reaching the ground above? Fortunately, Zhuang Yuanying came to teach, not to commit suicide bombings. After completing the preliminary modification, the girl's face was calm, and the movements of her hands suddenly accelerated. She pushed the joystick on the processing table, and quickly sent the engine that was already beating violently to an open laboratory. Through the monitor in the workshop, the picture in the open laboratory is clearly presented in front of the two. I saw that Tianxing 3 after the temporary repair had begun to return to the state of parts amidst the uninterrupted muffled sound of blasting. But just before the engine completely disintegrated, Zhuang Yuanying used remote control to make the engine's jets shine brightly, and the 8 thick mechanical arms used to fix the engine and transmit energy inwards all around immediately gave out twisted and groaned overwhelmed. And from the data panel of the monitor, it can be clearly seen that this engine is releasing amazing power, which is more than one step better than the original version, and it is not much worse than the latest flagship model of the Tianxing series. But of course, this state cannot last for a long time. After a while, the light of the engine nozzle began to weaken, and the surrounding shells also began to crack, and sparks shot out from it. And when the engine emitted thick black smoke and completely shut down, Sean couldn't help but let out a long breath. What a wonderful lesson! Objectively speaking, the modification plan demonstrated by Zhuang Yuanying is not so exquisite. Whether it is the tools used, the materials added, or the techniques used in the modification, the essence is simple and unpretentious. Even this plan itself is probably not original, and it should have been circulated in the Qian galaxy for a long time. But teaching does not mean showing off skills, and being ingenious does not mean that it is not practical. The advantages of this modification plan are clear at a glance. It is a means that can be used to save lives and escape. If you encounter any danger while riding a spaceship and need to speed up to escape, and the performance of the spaceship is insufficient, this solution allows people to use limited resources to complete the escape. Although the engine will be completely scrapped after escaping, it is much better than dying on the spot. And through the monitor, Looking at the motor that was scorched black due to overload, Xiao En couldn't help but feel familiar. It and the scrapped product that was transformed into sky and wilderness seemed to be brothers and sisters. Sure enough, the next moment Zhuang Yuanying said, afterwards, you will transform it into Skyfield. Xiao En smiled when he heard the words, and couldn't help rubbing his wrists. After witnessing two wonderful courses with his own eyes, his hands were also very itchy. The study of machine modification and refitting must be put on top of practical operation. After taking the joystick from Zhuang Yuanying's hand, Xiao En took a deep breath, sorted out the modification plan he had just seen and thought of in his mind, and only started to operate after confirming that it was roughly correct. Shan is not the kind of genius who has an unforgettable memory, and Zhuang Yuanying's demonstration steps seem simple and unpretentious, but they are all-round transformations for advanced industrial creations. The slightest mistake, so the operation process must also be cautious. At the same time, when Shan pulled down the joystick, he was already mentally prepared for the failure of the transformation and the scrapping of the engine. Anyway, he still owes millions of dollars now, so he doesn't care about the debt of one more engine. However, when actually doing it, Shan found that the process was much smoother than expected. My hands seemed to be guided by some invisible force, and I copied the steps demonstrated by Zhuang Yuanying in an orderly manner, and some vague pictures flashed in front of my eyes. The Sky 3 on the processing table seemed to overlap with the engine in another time and space. This kind of vision surprised Xiao En. Is this the revelation of the Force? Shan immediately calmed down, feeling the flow of the original Force carefully. Since he entered the Dry Galaxy, he felt that he was more and more connected with the Force. Many things that he couldn't do or see before seemed to be tangible now. Although this change is very slow, it is undoubtedly advancing steadily step by step. However, at this moment, Xiao En suddenly felt a strong disturbance, as if outsiders had been mixed into his fusion with the Force. The sudden disturbance suddenly broke the blurred picture in Shan's mind. The next moment, a rapid and heavy panting sounded in his ears, as if it was the grunting and roaring of a wounded beast. Xiao En quickly turned his head, and saw that the girl who was supposed to be supervising the renovation work by her side had already knelt down on the ground, her petite body rising and falling with the sound of breathing, as if something huge was about to break out of its shell. Xiao En couldn't help but be shocked by this weird scene, and he couldn't care less about thinking about the reason for the change. He hurried forward a few steps, trying to help Zhuang Yuanying up and check on her condition, but just after taking a step, the other party curled up with hands and feet as if being strongly stimulated. Xiao En immediately stopped moving forward, because Zhuang Yuanying's current situation was too abnormal. Accompanied by strong breathing, cold sweat gushed out of Zhuang Yuanying's body like a fountain, soaking through his clothes in an instant. And the soft hat on her head also fell to the ground, revealing two eye-catching horns. Whether it was an illusion or not, Shan always felt that the two horns seemed to be sharper than they had ever been before. Chapter 92. Before Xiao En could take a closer look, Zhuang Yuanying suddenly stood up and ran out of the workshop in a beastly manner. Her footsteps were heavy and hasty, and when she went out, she even slammed her body heavily against the door frame. Half of her shirt was torn, her skin was scratched, and a bunch of blood splashed out. But Zhuang Yuanying didn't realize it, and after stepping out the door, she bumped into a thick wall not far in front. Seeing this, Xiao En hurriedly followed, trying to hold the other party to prevent her from hitting her head badly. However, Zhuang Yuanying's brute force seemed to be stronger when Zhuang Yuanying was in a state of trance. With a shake of his hand, Xiao En lost his footing and staggered into the wall. That wall is just one step away. In an emergency, Xiao En didn't care so much anymore, and stretched out his hand, wanting to use the force to stop the bloody tragedy from happening. However, the pulling force of the Jedi apprentice could not restrain Zhuang Yuanying in a berserk state at all. Xiao En only felt as if he was pulling the flying boat with his little finger, and the restraint did not exist at all. Next, Zhuang Yuanying slammed into the wall unstoppably, but there was no scene of bloodshed as Xiao En expected. The moment the wall touched Zhuang Yuanying, it opened to both sides, revealing a path leading to a deeper underground channel. Zhuang Yuanying staggered into the passage, missed a step, and rolled down amidst a series of muffled sounds. Shan only caught up at this time, but before stepping into the passage, the wall in front of him suddenly closed. Shan tried to stretch out his hand to pat and pull, but the tactile sensation he received fully demonstrated that the wall was so thick and solid that it could not be shaken by manpower. But what to say to open the mechanism? Xiao En looked around, but couldn't figure it out at all. This underground base was still too unfamiliar to him, too mysterious. Xiao En thought for a while, and decided not to act recklessly, but to search around. If he couldn't find the mechanism, he would take the elevator back to the ground and ask Anping and others to rescue him. Zhuang Yuanying's abnormal state, it is impossible for them not to know about it. However, just as Shan made up his mind, he heard a piercing but familiar siren from the corridor. In an instant, Shan's whole body trembled, and a strong sense of crisis surged, making him seem to have returned to the time when he boarded the Silver and was ambushed in the asteroid belt not long ago. Soon, the facts proved that his situation was even worse than before. Several automatic weapons suddenly rose in the blood-red passageway stained by the alarm lights, and their guns aimed at Shan one after another, firing mercilessly. Shan had to be thankful that he had done actual combat training with L. Yunnan in the past 2 days, and he was no stranger to this kind of scene of being shot by weapons, so his body reacted correctly at the first time. He jumped back to the processing workshop, leaned against the wall to cover himself, and passed by countless energy beams. Judging from the traces left on the ground, wall, and ceiling, the automatic weapons in this passage are obviously lethal enough. Shan hid behind the processing table in the processing workshop, making sure that he was safe for the time being, and then tried to calm down and began to think about the sudden change. In a sense, this experience is like a trap for killing people. Zhuang Yuanying used the machine repair skills as a bait to transfer him into this trap. The densely packed automatic weapons in this corridor are enough to wipe out an entire elite team, and they are even more reliable against a single person. But Shan knew very well that this couldn't be a trap, because Zhuang Yuanying had no reason to target him at all, and if Zhuang Yuanying really wanted to kill someone, there were too many opportunities to do it in the base. So these automatic weapons are not targeting themselves, but... Xiao En shook his head. Although he didn't think Zhuang Yuanying was targeting him, he couldn't think of any other reason to explain why she was weaving a net on her own land. Even if everyone in the Red Seeing Squad has eccentricities, this is too weird. But now is not the time to explore the principle. Seeing that the turrets in the corridor are constantly digging the walls and gradually disintegrating the workshop where he hides, Xiao En knows that he has no time left. At this time, the young Jedi apprentice was very grateful that he had a communication ring that never left his body, so he could ask Anping and others for help immediately. However, when Xiao En activated the communication ring, he only heard a harsh rustling sound. The internal communication of the underground base was actually strongly disturbed. Shan immediately felt convinced. Zhuang Yuanying usually looks coquettish and timid, but her abnormality in private is no less than that of her teammates. The next moment, with a few loud explosions, the walls of the workshop finally couldn't stand the ravages. Under the bombardment of 2 missiles, a huge gap was opened, and the energy beam like a torrential rain followed closely, sweeping all over the workshop. Every corner of the... Shan curled up and hid behind the processing table, hoping that this heavy equipment could help him support himself for a few more minutes. Although the communication was blocked by interference, there was no reason for Anping and others to make such a big noise in the underground base not noticeable. Time has become extremely long at this moment. Xiao En only feels that every breath he takes is like years and months, and the processing table behind him is blasted hot by the high temperature rays in an instant. Finally, a shocking sound came from a distance. The reassuring voice. Damn, what's going on here? Xiao Zhuang has an illness again. The slightly sharp and harsh exaggerated voice belonged to the team Dr. Su Bo. Turn off the alarm first, is the controller brought by L. Yunnan. The steady voice belonged to Anping. Humph, nonsense. And the iconic sneer naturally wouldn't belong to anyone else. Hearing the voices of these 3 people, Shan let out a sigh of relief, knowing that he had survived. Because just as the 3 people finished speaking, the overwhelming sound of gunfire in the corridor also stopped. Not long after, outside the workshop, the footsteps of Anping and others approached. Uncle Su asked a little nervously, Xiao En, are you still alive? L. Yunnan sneered and said, that kid's life is very hard, how can he die so easily? Uncle Su continued, if it were you, you would be easily killed by such a bunch of automatic weapons all of a sudden? Damn, Xiao Zhuang actually installed a flamethrower here? This fire dragon spout's overwhelming, a living person will turn into a skewer in an instant. Do you really think that kid is still alive? L. Yunnan said, after undergoing my special training, if you still can't survive. Uncle Su scolded, it is precisely because of your special training that I think that kid is particularly dangerous. In the morning, his muscles were pulled, in the afternoon he was burned all over, and in the evening he had to stay up all night reciting books to the point of pain. Why do you think he can be in a normal state? The ground shuttles through the hail of bullets without injury. Yunnan immediately suppressed his sneering, and stopped speaking. Uncle Su said weakly, in fact, I think that kid is quite pleasing to the eye. Among the newcomers recently, he has the best aptitude. Although his personality is a bit mother-in-law, his personality can be corrected. In the end, our Red Apricot squad sure enough, it is worthy of the rookie killer team, no rookie with the best aptitude can escape death. After being silent for a while, Su Bo said again, if something really happens, don't let Xiao Zhuang know. Yunnan said, Xiao Zhuang is not mentally handicapped, how could he not notice something happened? Uncle Su then suggested, if there is something wrong, when Xiao Zhuang wakes up, you can tell her that Xiao En has been transferred by Boss Li. Anyway, he was not on the same side as us, and he suddenly disappeared without a trace. A reasonable ending. Even if Xiao Zhuang has doubts at that time, as long as the three of us insist on it, she will convince herself to believe it. Yunnan pondered for a moment, but was unable to refute. With Zhuang Yuanying's character, she really couldn't hold back the persistence of her teammates. If the people around her insisted that Li Yu was a soft girl, she would probably open her mouth and believe it. Uncle Su nodded again, and affirmed himself, this method is actually good. Anyway, most of the young first loves of girls end up like this. I don't know how Boss Li will explain it. Yunnan said, it's about Xiao Zhuang, Boss Li won't say anything. Anping couldn't listen anymore, can you two stop insisting that Shan is dead? Chapter 93. Consider defeat before victory. This is my professional quality as a doctor. Besides, even if the kid is still alive, he may not be willing to stay after being stabbed in the back for no reason. Afterwards, he asked Boss Li to apply for a transfer. It's not even unusual to get out of silver at this point. Su Bo gave quite sufficient reasons for Cai's remarks. And this reason immediately made Anping speechless. Because what Su Bo said is right, looking at this matter from Shan's point of view, he has absolutely sufficient reasons to be angry, not to mention the inexplicable murder. What's worse is that it was stabbed in the back by his own family. Knife. Even if Zhuang Yuanying herself had an accident, what about the rest of the Hongxing team? Knowing that Zhuang Yuanying has such a dangerous heart disease, but no one reminded Shan in advance, let alone any preventive measures, allowing Shan to be caught off guard and almost died underground. How much difference is this behavior from direct killing? In the silence, the team had arrived at the door of the processing workshop. Anping looked at the mess inside the door and sighed softly. You should have heard all the words just now. Next, whether to disappear without a trace or not depends on your choice. Shan had already made a judgment at this time. He leaned forward from behind the processing table with some difficulty, and said, I need a sufficiently reasonable explanation. Anping was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help sighing, it would be great if you are willing to listen to someone's explanation. What happened to Xiao Zhuang was indeed an accident. She didn't intend to harm you, and we kept this matter from you before. Naturally, there are difficulties, of course, with the current situation, it would be futile to say anything about difficulties. Please bear witness to the truth with your own eyes. As Anping said, he took a few steps forward to pull Xiao En up, and said with a forced smile, speaking of which, you can still get a blessing in disguise. Xiao Zhuang is the little rich woman in the team. When she wakes up, she will give you reasonable compensation. In one fell swoop, cut off all your debts to Boss Li. Uncle Su yelled strangely when he heard the words, is there such a good thing? Oops, I seem to have been burned just now. I'm afraid it won't get better without the priceless burn medicine. However, no matter how much he yelled, the rest of the people just pretended not to hear. Afterwards, a group of people left the workshop, and under the leadership of Anping, they came to the thick wall where Zhuang Yuanying had previously concealed himself. Yunnan pressed the controller, and the wall was split to the left and right, revealing a dark and deep passage. Anping walked into it first, Xiao En followed closely behind, and Yunnan and Su Bo were at the end of the line. Shan was amazed along the way. Before, he thought that this deepest base was built by Zhuang Yuanying, but this passage seems to have quite a history. The metal frame supporting this underground passage carries the same heavy history. Judging from the mottled rust, this channel has a history of at least 30 years. But how old is Shahara? Couldn't it be that she has a beautiful face forever? She is already in her 40s or 50s, but she still maintains a girlish posture. As if seeing through Xiao En's doubts, Ping explained without turning his head, this underground base is not the property earned by Xiao Chuang, although I don't deny that she is the best at increasing income and reducing expenditure in the team, and she also has the most deposits. But it is impossible for her to earn an entire underground factory on her own. This is the legacy left to her by the previous captain. Uncle Su interjected, so saying that getting rich through hard work is purely false. The key is to have a rich father. Anping ignored Uncle Su's gag, and continued to explain to Xiao En, in fact, this entire underground base is the foundation laid by the former captain. It's just that Xiao Zhuang inherited the most essential part from it. Before he finished speaking, he heard L Yunan sneer, if the essence is handed over to you two to inherit, I'm afraid it will be squandered long ago. Anping smiled awkwardly and was speechless, while Su Bo retorted, the deposits are always respectful to those who accompany the last ones, how can we have the right to laugh at us? L Yunan raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that the always slippery team doctor dared to joke with him. Just as he was thinking about how to teach him a lesson, an orange light suddenly appeared in his vision. This passage has come to an end. Su Bo smiled complacently. He dared to face L Yunan just now, of course because he saw the right moment and made it inconvenient for L Yunan to retaliate immediately. And with L Yunan's rough temperament, he will soon forget about it after missing the opportunity, and let himself take advantage of it for no reason. But Uncle Su quickly restrained his smile. The orange light in front of him has become more and more intense, and he actually knows better than anyone what that strange light means. This is really not an occasion where you can laugh. However, if he didn't let his mentality relax a bit, Uncle Su really didn't have the confidence to continue walking. Even if I have seen it many times, the scene at the end of the passage still makes people fall into nightmares from time to time. A moment later, as everyone crossed the last corner of the passage, the deepest secret of this underground base was finally exposed. An elliptical space with a length of more than 50 meters, a width of more than 10 meters, and a height of more than 10 meters appeared in front of everyone. Light. And in the middle of the space, 36 medical cabins are neatly stacked. The cabins are filled with orange-red liquid. The sweet color passes through the glass windows of the medical cabins, intermingling with the snow-white lights outside the cabins, making people the entire underground space presents a strange color. Surrounding the 36 medical cabins, there are dazzling instruments and equipment, which are closely connected to the medical cabins through complicated pipelines, making ticking sounds of different frequencies from time to time. These sounds agitated each other in the ellipsoidal space, making this orange-red space even more weird. Then, in the middle of the medical cabin, people saw Zhuang Yuanying. The girl had already recovered her former tranquility. She curled up her slender body in front of a medical cabin, falling into a sound sleep. A woman was also sleeping in the medical cabin, and more than a dozen pipelines connected the medical cabin behind it. She looks much older than Zhuang Yuanying, her facial features are vaguely similar to Zhuang Yuanying's, and she also has horns on her forehead. The kinship between the two is clear at a glance. There were also people sleeping in several nearby medical cabins. Men, women, and children were all different. Without exception, they had horns on their foreheads, showing that everyone belonged to the same race, and in the outer medical cabins, the situation seemed a little scary. What was soaked in the orange-red liquid was no longer a complete person, but a variety of indescribable objects. Among them, the larger ones were fleshy balls with a diameter of nearly 2 meters, which almost filled the space in the medical cabin, and resembled a heart. Generally shrinks and expands continuously. The smaller ones are only the size of a fist, and only a human shape can be vaguely seen. Standing at the entrance, Sean could only feel the scene in front of him, which was so weird that it was hard to describe, and amidst this weirdness, he even faintly felt a painful sense of shock. His breathing couldn't help but become heavy, and his complexion gradually turned pale. Here, what exactly is it? Chapter 94. Regarding Sean's question, Enping just patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't be nervous, this is just a well-arranged prop scene." While speaking, Enping walked into the ellipsoidal space first, randomly found a beeping console, and stretched out the mechanical arm to lift the shell. I saw that the inside of the huge metal table was empty, only a simple sound chip was making beeps faithfully. Those medical cabins are relatively complicated. In addition to building the shell, they also need to prepare a nutrient solution with a realistic color and consistency, and then find a way to create a test body that can be faked. The whole project is said to be costly. In the end, Thanks to it was only with Master Bai's help that the work was barely completed. When Anping spoke, he sighed for a while, and his whole person seemed to be trapped in memories. After just a moment, he shook his head and brought the topic back. You must want to ask, why did we go to such lengths to create this kind of scene? It's very simple, when Xiao Zhuang goes crazy, only this environment can calm her down. No matter how much madness she has gone before, as long as she sleeps here once she sleeps, she will be able to recover to 7 or 788. Xiao En felt more and more unbelievable the more he listened. Why did such a thing happen? What has Zhuang Yuanying experienced? Anping sighed, good question, but this question is too difficult to explain in one word. I can only say that this used to be her home. Whenever she was frightened by accidents and exceeded her capacity, she would come here to lick her wounds. Shan was surprised, home? You mean she used to live in this biological laboratory? As he asked, Shan's expression darkened. Because by carefully observing this carefully crafted prop scene, Shan has been able to judge some things. The experiments carried out in this biological laboratory are clearly human experiments. Those men and women soaked in the orange-red nutrient solution are all experimental materials. And those inhuman pieces of meat in the outer medical cabin. Shan is no longer willing to think about their origins. That's right, Xiao Zhuang used to live in the laboratory. According to her memory, the empty medical cabin over there is her bed. Anping stretched out his finger and pointed to a medical cabin on the outer side. His movements seemed weak, and his eyes were half drooping. It seemed that only with this lazy posture could he maintain emotional stability and allow him to serve Shan smoothly. Let's go on. The person who destroyed this laboratory was the former leader of Bian and the former captain of the Red Apricot Squad, Gu Zheng. He rescued Xiao Zhuang from the laboratory and brought her to the deserted area to grow up, but unfortunately, he only saved Xiao Zhuang. While speaking, Anping couldn't help sighing. At that time, we were all working hard at Qunkan security to make a profit, and we hadn't even heard of what happened to Bian. Many things happened after joining the Hongxin team. Boss Li told us intermittently, but many details are still missing, so we can only guess out of thin air. But in general, it is a story about a girl who overcame the shadow of her childhood and tried her best to walk into the sun, but she was not very successful. Although Xiao Zhuang had worked hard, the trauma left by that laboratory was too heavy. Years are far from enough to heal the wounds. Whenever she is strongly stimulated by the outside world and it is difficult to maintain her composure, she will inevitably go crazy. Only when she comes back here can she let go of her guard and return to normal. However, we don't know whether this method of recovery is good or bad. Maybe every time she returns to normal on the surface, it actually deepens the psychological trauma. But other than that, we have no other way. After Anping finished speaking, he sighed again, then shook his head, stepped into the center of the scene, hugged the sleeping girl, and walked out. Xiao En followed Anping, left this weird space, and just walked halfway. He couldn't help the emotions surging in his heart, and asked, why did this happen? As soon as this question was uttered, even Shan himself felt very naive. The Milky Way is so big, what is impossible? The Republic is radiant, but almost every place illuminated by the light will leave shadows, even the core area is no exception, let alone this galaxy located in the outer ring, which is close to the Republic. Not long ago, he witnessed the tragedy on DUI 4399 with his own eyes. Compared with it, human experimentation is actually not a big deal, but... However, Xiao En could clearly see that the label of Xiarun medicine was clearly printed on those medical cabins and the equipment around them. So this is not an accidental act of a few villains at all, but an organized and premeditated criminal act of a super-large enterprise whose status is close to the government. This is simply unbelievable. The Dry Galaxy is not a place where everything is tyrannical and dictatorial, and there are no anti-human customs. On the contrary, this is a prosperous galaxy with a highly developed civilization and people living and working in peace and contentment, so why does such an inhumane thing appear? In the Dry Galaxy, is there no law? Everyone in the Red Apricot Squad clearly felt Xiao En's anger from this question, but after a moment of silence, they all laughed out loud in unison. This kid, is he actually asking about the law? Which high-ranking courtyard is this young lady who is so ignorant of the world? Although when everyone first met Shan, they discovered that there were many innocent and ideal aspects of his character, but they never expected that under extreme anger, he would yell out such innocent questions. Law? He actually asked the law. However, after a brief sneer, Anping took the lead to restrain his smile and seriously responded to Shan's question. You mean, do you want the matter to be handled by the law? Xiao En calmed down and nodded, if you want to ask if it is true, I really mean it. Compared with personal judgment, I will always be more inclined to legal disposal. I know that you don't take my ideas seriously. The idea may seem too naive to you. But in any case, I stick to my beliefs. Shan, you may have misunderstood. Shan said sternly, I know that the law can't solve all problems, and in many cases it can't solve the problem at all. But if everyone abandons the law as soon as they come up, and each uses his own magic, then the problems will definitely increase. Similarly, I also admit that when the law fails, there must always be someone who transcends the law to solve the problem. However, no matter how brilliant and omnipotent those people who transcend the law are, there must always be someone in this world who firmly guards bottom line of the law. Shan's righteous speech not only failed to resonate, but made the atmosphere in the passageway even more awkward. After Liu Nan sneered, he simply turned his head away, ignoring the topic. Su Bo opened his mouth a few times, but felt a bone stuck in his throat. In the end, it was Captain Anping who shouldered the responsibility of breaking the embarrassment. Xiao En, if the matter should be handled by the law according to what you said, then you'd better take Xiao Zhuang to find Xiarun medicine and surrender now, because that is in line with legal procedures. Xiao En was taken aback when he heard the words, and before he could speak, he heard Anping add, and you can rest assured that on issues related to Xiao Zhuang, Quncan security will absolutely enforce the law fairly and will not do anything wrong. What you insist on law and justice will be implemented as soon as possible. When Xiao En heard this, of course he understood Anping's implication. The captain means that the laws of the galaxy will not protect Zhuang Yuanying. Chapter 95. Regarding Xiao En's question, Anping responded, the conclusion is correct. According to the laws and regulations of the Quncan group, Zhuang Yuanying does not enjoy complete human rights. Her current peaceful life is essentially absconding in fear of crime. All of us are not an out-and-out cover-up criminal. Xiao En asked in a deep voice, she is a living person, why can't she enjoy human rights? You actually ask why, of course it's because the people who made the law didn't want people like Xiao Zhuang to enjoy human rights. Moreover, you said that Xiao Zhuang is a living person, but it's a pity that Xiao Zhuang can't be regarded as a real person in the dry galaxy. Meaningful people. Xiao En frowned, and glanced at the horns on Zhuang Yuanying's forehead, it doesn't make sense. Compared with mere horns on the head, there are countless strange-looking intelligent creatures in the Milky Way. The Space City Li even lives with anacondas. Could it be that? Will the Quncan group recognize their human rights? Anping smiled, so you judge whether a creature should have human rights based on its appearance? As long as it looks similar enough to humans, it will naturally have human rights. Anacondas seem to be a negative example. Xiao En frowned even tighter, because Anping was obviously raising an argument. But then again, how to judge whether a creature is an intelligent creature and whether it enjoys rights is indeed not something that can be explained clearly in a few words. In fact, so what if you can explain it clearly? Is it possible that you can decide whether a creature, a group of people, should have power or not? Who gave you such power? If you think Xiao Zhuang is pleasing to the eye, then you believe that she should enjoy human rights, you are filled with righteous indignation at what happened to her, and you wish to immediately break the shackles and stop all medical experiments. But what is the difference between the logic of your behavior and those of those dictatorial tyrants? Shan was silent again. Anping's words are correct. To determine whether a creature should enjoy rights or not, regardless of the difficulty, at least it is not a matter of one person or one sentence. And in the environment of the Qian galaxy, the one who has the power to decide all this is probably the Quncan group. But why did the Quncan group persecute Zhuang Yuanying? Judging from the contact during this period, Zhuang Yuanying is no different from ordinary people except for the horns on her head and her cowardly personality. Well, she has amazing brute strength and excellent mechanical talents, but these are not the same. Cannot be grounds for persecution. And when Xiao En raised this question, Anping couldn't help but laugh like Liu Nan. This made Shan very uncomfortable, as if nothing he thought was beyond the control of the other party. This conversation seemed to be rehearsed in advance, and he was just playing a supporting role to set off the opponent. Next, Xiao En heard Anping say, your question is strange. It seems that there must be some reason to persecute a race. In other words, as long as there is any reason, a race can be persecuted. But unfortunately, this kind of absurd logic does prevail in reality. The population of the dry galaxy is more than 100 billion, but apart from the space city Li, it is not bad if you can find more than 1% of other intelligent creatures in other places. What do you think is the reason for this? The dry galaxy is too remote, so that outsiders can't find it at all. Sean shook his head. Geographical location is of course not the reason. In fact, he had noticed the special population structure of the dry galaxy when he checked the relevant information before entering the dry galaxy, but he never had a clear answer. It's actually very simple, because people here don't like aliens. Although the idea of repelling aliens has never been put on the table, it is a concept held by many people in the Chien galaxy, and it has a very deep historical accumulation. After joining before the Republic, the living conditions of the natives of the Gan galaxy were very poor. Of course, with the increasingly close contacts with the Republic, and later simply becoming a member state with a special status, the xenophobic situation in the galaxy has been greatly improved. But unfortunately, the inertia of history will not disappear. Some people who were oppressed in the past, the local alien races, will not be liberated because of the improved treatment of other alien races. Now, even anacondas can live freely in the dry galaxy, but Xiao Zhuang cannot. Xiao En only felt that this matter was getting more and more unreasonable, but he still suppressed the sense of absurdity in his heart, and said, in any case, this kind of discrimination is seriously contrary to the spirit of the Republic. Even if the Kyunkan group can turn right and wrong and put a certain race classified as a low creature, but if the Republic finds out the truth. Before he could finish speaking, Shan was interrupted. Anping sighed, so do you expect the Republic to come to the galaxy to uphold justice? If the Republic is so useful, the Kyunkan group would have collapsed 10 times long ago. Or, in your eyes, is the Republic just and radiant everywhere? Shan had to be silent about it. On the whole, the Republic is of course radiant, and the civilization and ideas it symbolizes are worth following and guarding by anyone. But where there is light, there is shadow. With Master's travels all these years, Shan has seen too many flying in the ointment. The Republic is great, but the Republic is not perfect, and it is not omnipotent. Many problems can only be left there, and many tragedies can only be left to happen. In comparison, what is the racial persecution in the dry galaxy? In fact, Gan Galaxy is a member of the Republic. Although it is special in all aspects, after so many years of dealing with it, does the Republic really know nothing about the problems here? Shan certainly has the answers in his heart, but he doesn't know how to face them. At this time, Shan missed Master even more. If the Jedi Master was by his side, he would be able to easily answer these questions and point out the correct path for the apprentice. It's a pity that Shan can only rely on himself now. And just when Xiao En fell into deep thought, Anping spoke again, continuing to add insult to injury. In fact, the Kyunkan group will only do things more delicately and meticulously than you expected. Although the dragon tribe that Xiao Zhuang belongs to is still a low-level creature whose status is almost the same as that of monkey lizards, a group has been doing evil for many years. Of course, I have considered it. The issue of crime exposure. If one day, they are forced to liberate the dragon people, what do you think they will do? Xiao En just felt strange. If there is such a day, then honestly liberate the dragon people. What else needs to be done? Is it possible that you still need to worry about the liquidation of the dragon race's historical debts? Anping said, the Gan Galaxy is ruled by giant corporations, and the core of corporations is profit-seeking. The dragon race is a valuable experimental material for Zyrun medicine. Do you think such a large corporation will be willing to let go? So they have already made a plan. Even if they really liberate the dragon people legally, they still have a way to continue to control this group. Kyunkan group has a very important medical security law. According to the regulations, some people with congenital diseases that are difficult to cure must sign a medical volunteer contract when they are born. The terms of the contract are very ingeniously designed. It seems fair and benevolent. It is purely out of humanitarian considerations, providing a chance for life extension for those born without medicine. But in fact, it treats people as cheap materials, wanton waste. Shan couldn't help asking, can't you quit? In theory, of course. After all, an irrevocable contract of prostitution is not good looking. According to the contract, although the volunteers are born to sign the contract, the whole experiment process is free to come and go, and no one can find fault. But in fact, any dragon man who is out of control will immediately face sky-high compensation. The pharmaceutical company will immediately issue a statement, claiming that the volunteer's departure halfway has caused serious losses to the company. Before the debt is settled, the volunteer's personal freedom must be restricted. Then many appraisal agencies will issue various it proves that the volunteers who should flee still have enough ability to continue to fulfill the contract, so the pharmaceutical company can reasonably and legally bring the person back to the laboratory and use various experiments to make up for the loss. All in all, there will be no violation of the law in the whole process. The elites in the galaxy who have received the highest legal education have designed every detail to be impeccable. Although it has not been put into actual operation, I think this is probably the what legal spirit are you pursuing? Sean only felt a dry throat, completely speechless. Chapter 96. What Anping said was certainly not the legal spirit that Sean was pursuing. This kind of legal procedure designed for the purpose of harming individuals, no matter how delicate, is an out-and-out evil law, which should be amended or even abolished. However, judging whether a law is an evil law is not that simple. It is impossible for Xiaoan to believe that everything he saw in front of him came from the evil law of the Quncan group just based on Anping's words. What if Anping was lying? Or, even if he himself had no intention of lying, was he being misled? In the long conversation just now, Anping performed with ease, repeatedly blocking Sean speechless, as if he was prepared to face Sean's questions in advance. And this gesture is completely inconsistent with Anping's usual style, so Xiaoan suspects that most of those words come from the speech he copied from somewhere. In other words, Anping was only relaying other people's opinions, so the reliability of this kind of second-hand or even third-hand news was very suspicious. To judge right from wrong, more comprehensive investigation and more conclusive evidence are needed. But of course, it is not always possible for him to conduct a comprehensive investigation and collect evidence. Now, let alone caring about the human rights situation of the dragon race, he can't even protect himself. So, before the truth or the conclusion is drawn, how should I face the evil law of the Quncan group? Report to Quncan security? That's ridiculous too. For a moment, the young Jedi apprentice fell into unprecedented confusion. And this confusion is enough for Anping. The sleepy man glanced at Xiaoan from the corner of his eye, and couldn't help but smile. It is already an excellent start to shake a person who believes in death in his heart. I believe that as he witnesses more and more things with his own eyes, the innocence in his heart will gradually dissipate. In fact, Anping didn't dislike Xiaoan's innocence, although it was a bit annoying that he had to worry about the mere issue of killing people when he was carrying out his mission. But among the members of the Red Apricot Squad, who didn't have any annoying problems. In comparison, Sean is already the cutest one. What's more, which veteran didn't come from the age of innocence? More than 10 years ago, Anping, Lu Nan, and Su Bo were all high-spirited and idealistic recruits. When it came to innocence, they were 10 times simpler than Xiaoan now. Many childish words and deeds, recalled afterwards it makes people blush. However, after more than 10 years of trials and hardships, no matter how naive a person is, he will grow up. Although his appearance after growth is somewhat distorted, Anping still likes his current self more than the one that was brutally beaten by society in the past. Similarly, Anping is also looking forward to Sean's growth, and wants to see how long his innocence will last. In silence, a group of people came to Uncle Su's infirmary. The senior team doctor skillfully placed Zhuang Yuanying on the hospital bed and prepared an injection for her. Sean couldn't help but feel his heart move, as she had seizures many times. Uncle Su said without turning his head, "The situation is much better now. In the early years, I would go crazy every now and then, especially." At this point, there was a pause. Lu Nan sneered and added, "Especially when I see you, the probability of an attack is extremely high." Su Bo said embarrassingly, "So didn't I try to cover up later? She had the worst attack when you masked her face. Didn't I wear the wrong mask the first time? She came suddenly, so I had to pull a mask. Who would have thought it was a Drexel mask?" Uncle Su explained embarrassingly, "In short, later it turned out that the smell of a doctor on me triggered her stress response, and over the past few years, she has adapted to this environment and basically won't go crazy. However, occasional attacks are still very troublesome, and many conventional drugs have not worked for her. The medicinal materials are not too easy to find. This time after the injection, I have to find Boss Li to buy it again." Lu Nan added insult to injury, "The drug is ineffective. A large part of the reason is that she underwent complicated drug experiments when she was a child, and our second knife doctor has not yet analyzed the ingredients of those drugs." Su Bo immediately protested, "Don't force others to be difficult. If I can even analyze the formula of the drug test more than 10 years ago, I would have rejuvenated myself, why would I be ridiculed by you every day? Hearing his teammates bickering beside him, Sean shook his head lightly, knowing that they were just using this kind of banter to relieve his psychological pressure. Seeing the pale young girl sleeping soundly on the hospital bed, Sean felt indescribably heavy. Although not long ago, Xiao En almost died in the underground base because of Zhuang Yuanying's illness, but of course he would not resent her, he just felt that this girl from the dragon race was really pitiful. If I can, I really want to help her. Anping sighed, don't think about it, you can't help. If we could help, wouldn't we sit by and watch her suffering for so many years? Whether Su Bo or El Yunnan, everyone did their best, but the situation is indeed too special to make people feel powerless. Sean asked, Dragonoid, what exactly is it? Su Bo said, who knows, probably because of the horns on the top of the head, it looks a bit like a dragon in myths and legends. Anping said, isn't it because the blood is rare? El Yunnan was also surprised and said, I thought it was just a random name given by you. Xiao En was dumbfounded when he heard that, you people who claim to have tried their best, even Zhuang Yuanying's ethnicity is not clear. Anping coughed and explained, don't get me wrong, we didn't lie about our concern for Xiao Zhuang, but there are some things that the more we know, the better. Xiao En was about to ask a question when El Yunnan asked first, if we already know your origin and identity now, can you still chat and laugh with us here? Sean immediately shut his mouth. If the identity of his Jedi apprentice is exposed, then the tacit understanding between himself and Li Yu will no longer exist, and the situation will indeed look very awkward. Anping said, for the same reason, from Xia Wang's standpoint, what she experienced in the past may not be willing to let other people know, even us who are closest to each other. El Yunnan interjected, wake up, what qualifications do you have to be the closest? She has a better relationship with Chen Sanwan than you, and her closest relationship will always be Bai. In the end, no matter how hard we try to show kindness, we are right, she's always been an anomaly. Anping couldn't help sighing when he heard the words, people who are not of our race must have different hearts. This sentence is the same from the standpoint of Xiao Zhuang, so we would rather maintain a certain sense of distance from Xiao Zhuang. The fact is that this is also her. This is one of the reasons why there have been fewer seizures in recent years. After some words, everyone in the Red Seeing Squad stopped talking at the same time, obviously their hearts were too heavy to talk easily. Correct. In the end, it was Team Dr. Su Bo who broke the silence. If you want to know more about the dragon people, you can go to the database and look it up. The former captain left a lot of things there. Although Xiao Zhuang and us can't get close, your situation seems to be different. Sean was taken aback, me? I was the one who stimulated her to the point of insanity just now. The allergen that caused the irritation can't be you. If you can stimulate her, Boss Li won't bring you back. There should be other reasons. On the other hand, you obviously joined the team not long ago, but you are still a stranger. Little girl Zhuang is obviously not very afraid of you, this treatment is indeed completely different from us ugly people. As Su Bo spoke, he let out a particularly heavy sigh. Chapter 97. After leaving the infirmary, Sean went straight to the database in the underground base. After experiencing the previous shocking changes, Sean's mind has been completely focused on the dragon people. He wants to know about the characteristics, history, current situation of this race, and so on. Vaguely, he felt that the secret of the dragon race might have something to do with their attempt to investigate the galaxy. What's more, even if he doesn't have the energy to solve Zhuang Yuanying's problems now, it's impossible to just sit by and watch. Even just knowing a little bit more is good. When Sean pushed open the door of the database, a rotten breath came over his face. As far as the eye can see, all kinds of memory cards are piled up like a mountain, and from the thick accumulation of dust, it can be seen that the place has been neglected and there are few patrons. Most of them were completely abandoned after being left behind by the previous captain, becoming unwanted waste. Therefore, Anping and others don't know much about the dragon people. Whether it is to protect Xiao Zhuang, or these people have no desire for knowledge at all. It is really hard to say. After sighing, Sean searched for the information he wanted through the computer in the database. The dragon race, a semi-indigenous creature in the dry galaxy, is born with evil powers, and encounters are unknown. Xiao En found such a record in a work on folk culture of the galaxy. Although it was only a few pens and it was written hundreds of years ago, it still gave Xiao En a rough outline. Although I don't know how this semi-indigenous is defined, but the meaning of the 8 words born with evil power and encountering unknown people is clear at a glance. Anping once said that people in the galaxy are naturally xenophobic, so one can imagine what attitude the people in the galaxy will take towards a race that looks different from humans and possesses extraordinary abilities. Afterwards, Sean dug through and found a lot of related materials one after another. The contents were similar, and they were all recording the abnormalities and unknowns of the dragon people. From these materials, Sean restored more details. The dragon people can be said to be the historical relics of the Dry Galaxy. They were active in the long past when the colonists first came to this place. From the current point of view, it is almost a mythical age, so various legends and stories have become bizarre and difficult. Adoption. The credible records of this race have been gradually interrupted as early as hundreds of years ago. After comparing several documents, Sean is roughly sure that the dragon race has several characteristics compared to humans. The firstborn horns, the strength is infinite. In addition, this tribe often played the role of religious leaders in the early years, providing services such as divination, sacrifice, and praying for rain to the colonists whose civilization level was still very low at that time, and left behind the legend that dragon people can call wind and rain. But after serious thinking, Xiaoan did not agree with the records left by these many documents. Because generally speaking, when the level of civilization is low, individuals with extraordinary abilities can easily form religious groups and deify themselves with religious legends and other methods. As these religious legends continue to spread, the content will become more and more distorted. For example, the story of the dragon people who can call the wind and rain, from the current point of view, is obviously a rumor. If the dragon people really have the ability to control the atmospheric environment of a planet by themselves, then how could they be regarded as monkey lizard-like creatures and locked up in the medical cabin as experimental materials? The most reasonable judgment is that the dragon people can perceive climate change more keenly than other people with their organs different from ordinary people, and then arrange religious rituals instead of the cause, showing the powerful magic power of calling the wind and calling the rain. This ability to perceive the weather is not worth mentioning in essence. Even many insects can do similar things, but insects cannot become religious leaders. However, this period of history as a religious leader has obviously become the root of the tragedy of the dragon people. With the gradual development and prosperity of the civilization of the Dry Galaxy, the living space belonging to the dragon race has been sharply compressed, and the special status brought about by religion has also been quickly lost, and even caused a strong backlash. In many historical documents, Sean found words of extreme hatred for the dragon race. Some of these stories record how the dragon people use their religious status to oppress all living beings and bring suffering, others record how the dragon people use their supernatural abilities to do evil and make waves. However, in addition to recording the stories of the Dragonoids, these documents are also full of extreme hatred and blatant prejudice against alien creatures, so that Sean frowns greatly when he reads them, and can only draw a question mark on the authenticity of these documents. But in any case, these documents at least prove one thing: the history of the persecution of the dragon race is very profound, and it is not simply the actions of the Kyunkan group. To put it a bit more extreme, as long as these historical accumulations are still there, even if the Kyunkan group disintegrates immediately and replaces them with a new ruler, the treatment of the dragon clan will still not change, and Zhuang Yuanying will still not be able to take off the soft hat on his head. Sean fell into deep thought while flipping through the materials, and time slipped away without a sound. When he finally checked the memory card in hand, he only felt dizzy, backache and soreness. Before he knew it, he had been sitting in the database for almost a whole day, and the communication ring on his wrist clearly showed the time of the next day. Xiaoan smiled helplessly. He used to have this problem of being obsessed with studying and forgetting time. When it was serious, he could even have no water for several days and nights, and he almost collapsed. Later it was Master Mistima who was responsible for waking him up every time. Now that the master is not around, no one can stop his obsession anymore. Xiaoan shook his head, temporarily driving away the tiredness accumulated in his mind. At the same time, he felt a little strange. Why didn't Anping and others come to see him? It was his turn to cook yesterday. Maybe everyone wanted to avoid disturbing his study, just collectively indica it. Xiaoan didn't know that Anping and others were full of complaints when they couldn't wait for someone to cook in the restaurant, but when they thought of waking Xiaoan up, a new round of hell teaching would start after a good meal. Everyone felt that eating a meal or two of canned food occasionally was a kind of adjustment. Xiaoan is willing to study by himself, so let him study by himself. It is best to study for 10.5 months, and then delay the time limit required by Boss Li, and then everyone will be happy. Contribute. After Xiao En came out of the database, he saw that he was simply freed by others, and it was not a big deal. He went back to his room silently, washed up briefly, opened another can to fill his stomach, and then lay on the bed to prepare rest. However, after closing his eyes, there were still chaotic thoughts lingering in his mind, without sleepiness at all. In the database, Shan undoubtedly gained a lot, but there were only more doubts arising from it. The more he learned about the past of the dragon people, the more curious Shan was about the current situation of the dragon people. Because even the latest credible information is more than 300 years ago. What exactly has the dragon people experienced in the past 300 years? Knowing the past is only driven by Shan's curiosity, but knowing the present can solve practical problems. Although Xiao En is very clear that his top priority is to find his master, find out the truth about Nan Heli's death, and incidentally expose and punish the evil deeds of Kyunkan Securities framing. However, it is impossible for Shan to turn a deaf ear to the tragedy of the dragon people that happened in front of him. As long as I can free my hands later. While thinking about it, Shan simply opened his eyes. Since you can't fall asleep, then don't force yourself to go to sleep, just go and investigate further while you are still mentally alert. Shan doesn't think that no one really knows about things that are not recorded in the database. On the contrary, the truth is probably close at hand, and he just needs to find the right direction to explore. Chapter 98. Shan immediately thought of the Omnivore Tavern not far from the underground base of the Red Apricot Squad. It was the most noisy place in the surrounding area and even in the entire deserted area. Although it was called a tavern, it was actually a huge building like a castle, attracting all kinds of people. Omnivore the Tavern is just like its name, it has the tolerance of all rivers, in other words, it has the ability to provide thoughtful services to all kinds of people. In the deserted area, the most useful service is the word intelligence. Different from the civilized cities that feast and feast, the living conditions in the deserted areas are extremely complicated. Even if there is a leader like Li Yu, the essence of this area cannot be changed. People die inexplicably and tragically almost every day, and new dangerous areas are marked on the map every day. Where not to go, who not to mess with, these are all compulsory courses for surviving in the deserted area. And the Omnivore Tavern is the best classroom. Regarding the news about the dragon people, if anyone in the deserted area could know the details, then apart from mystics like Li Yu, they should only be found in the Omnivore Tavern. Shan jumped up from the bed and was ready to go, but before he walked out of the gate of the base, he was blocked by Uncle Su with a fierce face. "Wait, boy, where are you going?" Hearing this murderous voice, Shan couldn't help being startled, and lowered his head, looking at the heavy dark circles under his eyes, like an 83-year-old genius doctor who was 10 years old. Embarrassed? Is there something wrong with Zhuang Yuanying? Uncle Su was even more angry. "Xiao Zhuang slept well, all because of you. I thought you would have to rest all day today, but I played cards with Enping all night last night." Instead of sleeping obediently, he ran out and swayed around. Shan was completely dumbfounded. "You guys are blaming me for your own death." But after thinking about it, I was surprised again. "Wait, it sounds like you are spying on me." Su Bo was stunned for a moment, and then he was very annoyed. He also stayed up all night and was confused. He, a dignified veteran of Hongxing, leaked secrets as soon as he opened his mouth. However, compared with other teammates, Su Bo's biggest advantage is that he is agile enough. Seeing Xiao En's doubts in his heart, Su Bo thought of a reasonable explanation. "You saw such an exciting thing yesterday, we are afraid that you will be unable to restrain yourself and act impulsively, so of course we should pay more attention." Su Bo said while shaking his head as if he had been wronged. "I didn't expect that our good intentions would be treated by you malicious surveillance. As expected, the trust between people is as difficult as heaven, and it is reasonable for people to believe that people who are not of my race must have different hearts." Xiao En's chest was stunned by these words, and he felt that Uncle Su was undoubtedly talking nonsense, but he couldn't find a suitable reason to refute. "I had to bow my head and apologize." Uncle Su was also relieved to see Xiao En bow his head. This kid has a very serious personality, so as long as he can't speak or refute, he doesn't have to worry about him forcing his way out. But then, I saw Shan pondering for a while, and said, "Thank you for your concern, but I will not act impulsively. I just want to go to Omnivore to inquire about information, so please rest assured." While talking, Shan stepped out, intending to pass Su Bo and go to the tavern. Uncle Su turned pale with shock. Wait, your reaction is very unreasonable. Normally, at this time, you should feel guilty and blame yourself for your misunderstanding, and then go back to your room to sleep, right? Why are you still alive and kicking? Sean said strangely, it's just a simple misunderstanding, so there's no need to feel guilty, right? I did fail to trust my teammates just now, but you didn't trust me either. You just assumed that I would definitely act impulsively. Everyone is equally divided. Uncle Su was so blocked that his eyes went dark, and his heart was filled with foul language. I almost forgot that Xiao En is definitely not stupid even though he admits death. On the contrary, his brain is more flexible than others, so he is definitely not easy to fool. Uncle Su was at a loss for words for a while, so Sean smiled and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, this is a deserted area after all, it's our own territory, nothing will happen. Uncle Su was really not comforted at all, and watched Xiao En leave the base, his figure hidden in the morning light of the rising stars. After a while, Uncle Su sighed in front of the door and made a decision. Forget it, let's go back to sleep. Boss Li started to investigate and put the responsibility on Xiao Chuang. Anyway, Boss Li will never be angry with Xiao Chuang. If she doesn't blame her, it would be a waste of talents. Just when the senior team doctor of the Red Apricot Squad gave up his duties without hesitation, Li Yu was earnestly fulfilling his duties as a leader in a commoner tavern in the south of the capital city Shijing of the Qiang Galaxy. In front of the bar, Li Yu briskly drank the third glass of expensive high-grade wine, causing a red-bodied bartender robot behind the bar to whistle in amazement, although the whistle was a bit out of tune due to the sound module being in disrepair for a long time. Around the bar, several drunken-eyed drinkers applauded loudly and cheered continuously. In this bar, it has been a long time since there has been a wine hero who can drink 3 glasses of spirits in a row without changing his face. Normally, a full-grown man would just take a sip and slip under the bar, where he would be stripped naked and thrown into the alley behind the bar. And after Li Yu accomplished this remarkable feat, he just smiled lightly, and his elegant smile made the ladies sitting beside him enchanted. Afterwards, Li Yu pointed at the bar and looked at the bartender with still clear eyes. Next, it's time to tell your story. The red etiquette robot let out a slightly out-of-tune sigh. Yes, I lost the bet. I really didn't expect you to drink so well, so according to the agreement just now, I will give the guest the story you want. Then, the robot poked its head forward and told the story of a middle-aged man who came to the bar alone to buy a murderer more than a month ago in a voice so weak that only each other could hear. I have served in this bar for more than 30 years, and I have received countless guests, but I have never seen a few guests who looked out of place as soon as they entered the door. Although he was wearing cheap long shirts and trousers, he tried his best to look like a commoner, and he deliberately picked up the accent of a commoner in Nanjing when he spoke. But let alone me, even a drunk in the corner can tell at a glance that he looks like a runaway, miss who came here to experience the life of the lower class. After a pause, the robot wanted to show off, but Li Yu was unmoved, and just continued to reach out and tap the bar lightly, urging him to enter the main line as soon as possible. Chapter 99. The tavern has always not welcomed Li Yu's impatient customers who like to push people straight to the main line. Because according to the statistics of this storytelling etiquette robot, the patience of guests is often positively correlated with their ability to pay. A listener who is willing to enjoy the story and explore the details will not only order a few more drinks while listening to the story, but also often tip the storyteller more in order to listen to more jokes. It's a pity that Li Yu is obviously not a high-quality customer, and the distinctive dangerous features on his body also made the robot give up the twists and turns of the story plan. The robot said, at that time, we were all secretly betting that the middle-aged man who obviously came to the wrong place would end up lying in some garbage dump with a bruised nose and a swollen face until dawn. But we all misread that time, he didn't know where he came from. I got a Xia Yuan coin. Guests, you should know that in Xiajing, the person who holds the Xia Yuan coin is protected by the Xia family. Think differently. Of course, Li Yu was familiar with Xiajing's common sense. He nodded and signaled the robot to continue talking. When I saw that Xia Yuan coin, everyone in the bar stopped thinking, and I just wanted to serve him out quickly. After all, people holding Xia Yuan coins often mean trouble. According to statistics, these people. Well, to make a long story short, he obviously came prepared. I don't know where he heard the cut, but anyway he found me, made a cut, and then asked me to connect him with some tough and reliable mercenaries, complete a revenge mission. As the robot spoke, it sighed again, deliberately exaggerating its own helplessness. Listen, this is not embarrassing. I am just a bartender, where can I find some strong and reliable mercenaries for him? Among the people who come and go to this bar, the most powerful ones are probably a group of drunk hooligans, a rogue. But he holds Xiaoyuan coins and understands our incision here, so I can't refuse, so I have to do my best to meet his request. Coincidentally, he really bumped into the right person that day. Speaking of this, the robot pushed his slender neck of limited length forward as hard as possible, causing the stretch spring to make a harsh creaking sound, as if it was about to be unable to support the huge head. And that flat metal face was almost attached to Li Yu's face. Have you heard of the name Sozaku? Li Yu tried not to show a mocking smile, and tapped his fingers a little harder on the bar counter. The robot quickly shrank its head and said, "Sorry, I was stupid to ask. How could it be possible for someone as experienced as you not to have heard of Sozaku's notoriety? That guest was looking for a mercenary, and just happened to come to the bar a few minutes ago. Little boss of Sozaku, do you think this is a coincidence? In the entire galaxy, there is probably no one who is more picky than Sozaku. He can do anything as long as he is given money. Let alone revenge for others, even if they attack some high-class figures, the people of Sozaku will not hesitate." Hearing this sentence, Li Yu could hardly help laughing out loud. Later, I opened a private room for them in the basement, and they went to discuss the conditions by themselves. I don't know what they talked about. About 2 hours later, they walked out of the room and went their separate ways. Well, that's all I know. Before the robot finished speaking, Li Yu's fingers snapped down. There was a faint fingerprint on the thick solid wood bar. Leaving fingerprints on hardwood with flesh and blood can naturally cut off the robot's slender neck easily. Li Yu's deterrent action immediately caused the internal voltage of the robot to become disordered. Okay, I admit that I omitted some content. As you expected, there is indeed a bugging device installed by us in the private room. After all, if someone discusses something too outrageous in our bar, it will be reported by the higher UPS afterwards. If we track it down, we will never end well if we don't know anything about it. Li Yuan laughed, and did not comment on this weak whitewashing defense, but only urged the other party to tell the truth with more severe eyes. The robot was helpless and said, "Guest, it's not that I deliberately concealed it, it's just that the news I heard that day, the fewer people who know it, the better. I also suggest that you stop here." Li Yu didn't speak, but just took out a beautifully carved commemorative coin from his pocket. The moment it saw the commemorative coin, the robot hummed involuntarily, apparently its processor was groaning due to an abnormal voltage. Anyone with basic judgment knows the value of the Kyunkan commemorative coin in Li Yu's hand, which was issued 300 years ago and has only been circulated in a very small range, especially the 10-digit serial number on the commemorative coin. It is very meaningful, even if it is only considered in terms of economic value, it is a treasure enough to buy this entire bar. So the robot didn't hesitate any longer, and said that shocking secret without hesitation. That middle-aged man should be from the Nan family. To be precise, he is a traitor from the Nan family. He hired Sozaku's pirates to assassinate his little master. The eldest lady of the Nan family, Nan Wu. If he dies, the Nan family will become extinct in a short period of time, and just establishing the next legal heir is enough for the family to have civil strife for a long time. During this period, those families who have been coveting Nanming's capital for a long time can attack the city as much as they want. At the end of the middle-aged man, he claimed to be serving the Ma family, and he also publicized that his actions had obtained the tacit approval of the board of directors, so Sozaku can rest assured and be bold. Going to ambush and assassinate the eldest lady of the Nan family. Hehe, this kind of thing is indeed only done by the 4 major families. Li Yu didn't speak, just stared at the robot coldly. The robot defended, "These are all true. I'm not talking nonsense, how dare I just say something like this for fun. I heard it clearly at the time, and Nan Wu's name appeared many times in their conversations. That middle-aged man even designed an ambush location and tactics for Sozaku, so he came absolutely prepared." Li Yu asked, "What about the monitoring records?" "All the records at that time were destroyed by the boss. After all, the risk of keeping such things is too great, and it is really not something that a small bar like us can afford. This is also true. If you don't believe it, I will no way," the robot said, trying to make a begging expression with the limited movable parts of the face. Li Yu pondered for a while, then flicked his fingers, and threw the valuable Kyunkan commemorative coin into the storage box on the robot's chest. "Enough, that's all." Chapter 100 After leaving the bar, Li Yu breathed a sigh of relief, a mocking smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, he turned his wrist, and quickly turned out another commemorative coin. The golden coin danced between his fingers as if it had come alive. Clear the details on the coin. However, for the assistant robot standing next to Li Yu with a high-speed imaging device, even if Li Yu doubles the speed of flipping the coin, the pattern on the front and back of the coin is still clearly visible. Naturally, the unique commemorative number on the Kyunkan commemorative coin can also be clearly seen. The one in Li Yu's hand has the same serial number as the one he just threw to the etiquette robot. Frequent use of counterfeit money will greatly increase the risk of identity exposure. Assistant Bai gave his hint in a cold tone. Li Yu smiled when he heard the words, put the coin back into his pocket, and asked back, then you expect me to give him the real thing? Buy a piece of fake news with a genuine commemorative coin? If I'm so stupid, you will only scold me more fiercely now. Bai asked, are you sure what he gave was fake news? Of course I'm sure. I just ran across 2 taverns at random, and I happened to be at the scene where Nanze's bought a murderer. However, the whole process was recorded by someone. Even the etiquette robot in front of the bar could tell the story in detail and vividly. If this is not fake news, it means that I hit the big luck and hit the heavens. Throughout my life experience, I have always been insulated from this kind of good luck. As an assistant, Bai is no stranger to Li Yu's pretentious logic. Although her logic circuit clearly gave a negative judgment, years of experience as an assistant have taught her to temporarily suppress her doubts. Because no matter how inconspicuous Li Yu's mouth is, he has amazing accuracy in this kind of vague judgment. Since he is sure that the news in the tavern is false, it is probably true. So, what do we do next? Li Yu said, let's reply to our employer Nan Yujin first, and pass on the story of the etiquette robot to him. Bai's logical circuit suddenly became more confused, didn't you say that was fake news? Li Yu said, is it important to be true or false? Nan Yujin sent us such a sky-high price order, obviously not asking for the truth, but Bian's endorsement of his story. Then Bai came to a sudden, you mean, Nan Yujin paid you to give false testimony? Li Yu said, otherwise, why is it necessary to charge such a high price for such a simple intelligence investigation work? Nan Yujin is not an ignorant young lady, she paid so generously, almost expressing the problem here. Of course, we must do our best to meet the needs of such a generous big customer, otherwise how can we continue to cooperate and cheat money in the future? These words caused Shiro to fall into silence. As Li Yu's high-quality assistant, the supreme leader of the Silver Knights, this robot with extraordinary performance often surpasses its original owner. Especially when dealing with some routine work, she can make precise judgments that are difficult for humans to achieve. However, in terms of fuzzy judgments such as scheming, this robot knows very well that even if its computing performance is 10 times stronger, it is still far behind her master. So when Li Yu has made a clear judgment, Bai will generally not argue anymore. However, what happened this time made it difficult for her to agree anyway. After a while, Bai said, you should know what the matter of Nan Zesu means to Nan Wu, and what it means to the Nan family. Now that you are perjured up for Nan Yujin, you want to stand on Nan Yujin's side. Give up Nan Wu. Li Yu said, there is no evidence to prove that Nan Yujin has any unfavorable intentions towards Miss Nan. False testimony does not necessarily mean that she has bad intentions. It is very likely that Nan Zesu has indeed rebelled and plotted against the master. There are some things in it that are inconvenient for Nan Wu to know too much, so he simply packaged up a half-truth and half-false news and threw it to Nan Wu to make her feel at ease. This is actually a common method used by guardians, such as wives running away with others after she died. She comforted her daughter that her mother was just a poor father who went to work far away. For such remarks, Bai's logic circuit immediately gave out a signal called anger. Li Yu immediately added, in addition, when Miss Nan was in trouble, Nan Yujin was the first to stand up to help her, and he was the only one who stood up to help Nan Wu. Now even Nan Wu himself I chose to trust Nan Yujin, so why should I doubt him instead? Bai said, Nan Wu's trust is probably just because he has no choice. Li Yu then asked, so do we have a choice? What's the benefit of doubting Nan Yujin? What's the use? Ms. Nan is struggling with living expenses now, and Nan Yujin helped pay the final payment for the last escort mission. When the Silver Knights acted as mercenaries, they were always only responsible to the party that paid the money. Bai asked, then you mean to give up Nan Wu? Whether to give up or not depends on Nan Wu himself. Li Yu said, we are neither Nan Wu's parents nor her lackeys. Our partners, or the object of our attachment, are the Nan family of the four major families. Rather than a quasi-heir with less than a little real power. If the young lady really wants to know why Nan Zaisu betrayed her, it is best to talk to me in person instead of entrusting someone else. But, in a short time, I am afraid it can't be done. After saying this, Li Yu let out a long mouthful of alcohol, and then stretched out his arms to buy. The assistant tacitly took out a hangover injection from the storage bag at his waist and injected it into Li Yu's vein, allowing the drunken night leader to continue to maintain his sanity. I have to remind you again that this hangover drug cannot be used repeatedly, and you can no longer use this method to hangover within 1 month. Li Yu said, "Don't worry, the next month will be my vacation time, this kind of frontline job running around is really not suitable for me. You didn't have to come in person." Li Yu sighed, "If there are more characters in the knights who are good at using brains, then I really don't need to do it myself. It's a pity that the people in the regiment have been spoiled by you all these years, and they come to cry when they encounter something. I'm begging Lord Bai for help, the so-called loving mother loses her life. I rely on you not to inject so quickly. Are you trying to burst my blood vessels?" "I'm just joking." Only then did Bai slow down the speed of the injection. "Okay, no matter what, Nan Yujin's work here has come to an end, and it's time to do our own work. Hehe, Xiao En is such a wonderful person. The more you investigate, the more fun you will have." Many. Bai took back the injection, and said coldly, "What you call fun, do you just bump into one dead end after another? I have been investigating in Shijing for 3 days, and there is not even a single clue that can be used. From this point of view, you are really not suitable for frontline work." Li Yu retorted, "If you understand my work this way, then it's too superficial. It's no wonder that you can only be a mere assistant. With my ability, I can't break through the outer intelligence network in 3 days. The level of secrecy in this matter is high enough, and the truth they are trying to hide is shocking enough." Bai Rare didn't continue to ridicule his master, but asked, "So do you have a way to break out now?" "Of course, it's still the same. If there is something that even I can't investigate, then I will entrust a professional to do it." "Well, the time for me to meet with him is almost here, and I am going to have a drink. The bar, the location is..." When Li Yu mentioned professionals, Bai was suddenly surprised. "You made an appointment with Chen Suangan. There are only a handful of intelligence professionals in the whole galaxy who can make Li Yu feel ashamed, and there are only a handful of people who are likely to be invited out for a drink by Li Yu.